Stand by, everyone. Stand by, stand by. We are almost with you. Okay. Sorry for keeping everyone waiting. There seems to be some kind of issue getting connected over at the network, Truth Frequency Radio, tfrlive.com. But we're here for now. I will keep on trying to re-establish the connection on this. I wonder if it's a coincidence. Friday the 13th. Oh, yes. How we doing, Mr. Lopez?
I am doing fantastic, Mr. Baker.
Yes, it's great to have you here. I just need to resize your face, and I'll share the screen with you. Don't panic, dude. Don't panic. That was a bit of a nightmare there. Don't know what's going on. I'll try and get it connected, folks, but I'll work in the background. I'm going to message the network. I noticed one of the shows earlier on had a little bit of an issue as well. And these things, from time to time, they happen. But at least we've got this as our fallback. And you can see we've got one window empty. Joe Joseph, he will be joining us throughout the course of today's show. Yes, it wouldn't be the same without the third horseman of the apocalypse. Now, I know some of you out there are saying, but Kev, there was 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, right? And there was. But the fourth one...
He now identifies as a soy boy horseman.
Ooh, soy boy horseman, huh?
Yes, indeed, Scott. Yes, indeed. And yes, I had an absolute nightmare yesterday, Scott. My sound equipment, it had been going glitchy, as you know. And then in the middle of one of the most fascinating, absolutely amazing calls from somebody that may or may not have been ex-alphabet agency, no less. It all went horribly wrong. Now, again, was it a coincidence that I was speaking to somebody from that shady world and the audio equipment went goosed? I don't think so. It's been on the blink for a while. But thanks to Mother Dearest out there, she came to the rescue. And today, yes, well, we've got a new toy, Scott, because you know how my language gets colourful, right? And sometimes I just want to say, what the... See, so now I can bleep myself out on the live. So yeah, I'll literally self-censor button.
Well, there you go. And it's awesome that you got a little bit of new audio equipment. That was long overdue, and you deserved it. So kudos on that. And I don't know if it's if a guy like you needs toys like that to play with. I can see a lot of shenanigans on the way.
Oh, there's lots more toys to be unveiled along the way. And I've even managed to say one of the hardest words I've ever come across. And you know I'm a bad reader at the best of times, Scott. I can barely read my own name out without stumbling over the words, right? So what I've done is I've taken advantage of this new technology, okay? and we've now got a sample of the fear of Friday the 13th, which it is, folks. It's a real Freaky Friday. Well, it is called paraskevedecatriophobia. Look at that, Scotty. Look at that. Didn't even have to look at the word yet. It's just a paraskevedecatriophobia. Yes, indeed. So I'm going to try and reach the network in the background here. But Friday the 13th, Scott, there's a full moon out there. The date yesterday was 12/12. And now here we are today, Friday the 13th, my friend.
Fun fact, 12/12 is my mother's birthday. So yesterday was my mother's birthday. And yeah, followed up by Friday the 13th. It's one of those things, like I always find myself torn with the numerology thing,
Yeah.
because part of me like says, well, the more you go looking for it, the more you're going to find it, right? So then it becomes that kind of situation. However, it's almost like you can't ignore some of the strange things that go on with numerology as well, right? So it's hard to find like a middle ground there. But I definitely think there's something to it. But I also think that people also put more into it than what's really there. If you know what I mean? So I don't know. The Friday the 13th thing. Obviously, I think a lot of that is just people focusing on that date and kind of looking for things to happen, and attributing any sort of bad luck to that day. But you could have also had that same bad luck occur on like a Friday the 7th or 8th or whatever. But because you're not thinking that it's Friday the 13th, you probably just would have, overlooked that whole thing. If something bad happened that day, you're like, oh,
Well, do you want a really interesting synchronicity, Mr. Scott? Your mum, her birthday, is the same day as my brother's. Go figure.
Oh, really?
Yes, indeed. Yep.
Wow. Very interesting.
The synchronicities, they just keep coming between us, man.
Yeah, the synchronicities continue, man.
Are you-
Very interesting.
Are you like the Mexican branch of my DNA tree?
I think so. I maybe.
I think there's something going on here,
could be
Scott.
possible.
And there's something weird going on. Now, folks,
there's
obviously, obviously, I'm still trying. I'm still trying to get a hold of people to see if we can get ourselves onto TFR as well, because it is Freaky Friday. It's the day of the week when we like to get our freak on, Mr. Scott. And I can't think of a better day than Friday the 13th. We can take a look at the history of that. I've got some stories about some of the stuff going on as well, some of the stranger superstitions, some of the weirder things that's happened on Friday the 13th. And historically, it's a date that's got all of this negative superstition and bad luck attached because bad stuff has gone down on Friday the 13th in history, Scott.
Yeah, it's because people put something to that number, and so things have happened, or people have done things, on those dates, and so then it makes the date more notorious, right? More synonymous with things happening. But I mean, if you look at it, the number 13 in general is, I would say, pretty important in numerology, or it holds a lot of significance, in different cultures and stuff. But like, I believe the Aztecs, they found 13 to be like a lucky number, right? So it just shows you can put whatever, intentions on that number, and then it can be saw, in that light. So if the Aztecs saw it as a lucky number, then maybe they were running around, and every time some good luck happened or something really, something positive happened, they attributed it to the number 13. Whereas now we look at it in negative connotations and negative terms. So I think a lot of it just has to do with the intention put on the number.
Yeah, big time. And I tend to think that we play a bigger part in all of this than we truly realize, Scott. I really do. That intent factor. If somebody had told us it was the 10th, that's a really unlucky number. Somebody had told us it was the 15th. And again, I think if you think about something enough, folks, whether it's the law of attraction. I know people talk about that. It's not something I've studied or read up on too greatly, but I think it ties in exactly when we go into the conversation about intent, Scott. You know, there was that thing called The Secret, and it was all about the law of attraction and stuff like that. And a lot of people poo-pooed it, new agey, but I do think we have a bigger effect on that psychic, subconscious kind of level than most of us appreciate, Scott. Call it the quantum connections, call it the quantum field. I don't know. But because we're told it's the 13th and it's unlucky, by golly, you better believe anything that happens then, it's going to be multiplied and magnified.
Yeah, it's we talk about the Mercury retrograde thing too, right?
Shh, not too loud. Not too loud around these parts.
Yeah, not too loud. But you see a lot of things happening during Mercury retrograde, and it's another one of those sort of situations to where, I mean, is there something to Mercury retrograde in in astrology?
Or is it because so many people are thinking about it on the same day?
Yeah, see, and that it goes to that too. Like, if they find out that Mercury's in retrograde, then they're starting to attribute everything that is going on to Mercury retrograde, right? So,
and you've seen how mad it goes around these times on social media. No criticism of people, but it's like there's a pre-Mercury retrograde, almost like a build-up towards that. You have a 3-week, 4-week festival of pre-Mercury retrograde, and then everyone battens down the hatches, and I'm telling you, dude.
Yeah. So it's kind of like that with Friday the 13th also.
It's all kind of like that, Scott. Mercury retrograde is coming in. Come to the bunker. Come to the bunker, Scott.
See, people? They should have never gave Kev all these toys to play with.
No, definitely not. Definitely not, Scotty boy. Definitely not. But we're going to have fun. We've got lots of stuff to get into today. I'll try. You see, if I try to add in the network now, Scott, if Scotty disappears, I'll add him back in real quickly. I'll still be here, folks, but don't think I'm like censoring Scott. I don't have a button on here to censor Scott. Not yet. Not yet, Scott.
No, he can just turn my cam off and hit mute.
Let's see.
I don't think this is going to happen.
I think so, but I've actually got you back. Work unavailable. Okay, so I'll share screens with you just now, Scott. There we go. Yeah, so we're unavailable just now. We'll keep on trying with the network, folks. Apologies. I've put it out on Facebook. I've put a link out on Twitter. If you want to do us a big, huge favor, you can send out a link too. All you got to do is hit share down below. Tell all your friends, anyone that's hiding under the bed tonight because it's Friday the 13th. Don't worry about it. Kevin, Scott, they've got it handled. They wouldn't scare you or anything like that. You can handle our woo, surely. Right, Scott? We're not that bad. We wouldn't like get into really spooky woo and stuff like that. We don't do things like that. No.
No. We would never get into the deep, dark, disturbing avenues of the woo. That's not our style, Kev. I don't know what you're talking about.
Something like that. But I was about to go into the chat room over at TFR Live to give the great people in there their shout out, Scott. They won't hear it because we're not connected, so we'll try again at the break. And as we go on, folks, we'll give some of you a shout out in the YouTube chat room. I really hope, I've got my fingers crossed, we can get the connection back at the first break, Scotty. But if not, we've got stuff here to talk about. We've got plenty to get into. And of course, with it being me and Scott, strange things, they seem to happen when me and you hook up together, Scotty. We never plan these things, right? But it's almost like we have these epic shows. Max comes along the last time, you with your Stull Cemetery story and everything else, the paranormal activity around you, etc. So my point being, I don't know where we're going to end up tonight, But folks, stay tuned because, like I say, something weird happens when
Yeah,
yeah.
we have a tendency to always slip down some rabbit hole that ends up taking things to some epic level, you know. So
Indeed, indeed. So let's get into it, shall we? And if we come over here, boom. Yes, indeed. Now, hopefully, the chat room will pop up on the other side, but I can take care of that in a moment. Or Geordie Rose looking all cool, looking like the bad guy that everyone thinks he is on Friday the 13th. Look, he's got one of those little grins on his face like he's a super villain, dude.
he literally has that kind of that menacing look a little bit. Like he's wearing the black and the red technical headset, and he's
Want a bit of a laugh before we get going then? Hang on. We'll I'll get into this here. Let's see now. Let me see, Mr. Scott. Tweets and replies. Yeah, that's the one. Bring this over here. You see, I need to remember now, Scotty, at least for this first segment anyway, we're not actually on radio, so I can talk about things that I'm showing, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yes.
So if we go up here, yeah, Geordie yesterday over on Twitter was saying, very interested in taking this for a test drive, right? And it's the new D-Wave, okay? You're talking about 5,000 qubits, things like that, Scott. So I felt I had to add, now, Geordie, you know what the internet will equate, you know that the internet will equate that to you bringing in those Lovecraftian old ones you once spoke of. Octopus, squid, octopus emoji. I'm just saying, can't wait to hear all about it. Yes, indeed. Geordie Rose liked it. See, he's got a sense of humour, dude. He's a normal guy. I don't know what all the fuss is about. He's not that bad, right? Right? Or are we being assimilated? That's the question. But folks, it's Friday the 13th, and to my knowledge, Scott, not yet anyway, I don't think anyone was assimilated on Friday the 13th, not into the Borg anyway. Not that I know of. And our chat popped up at last. I thought everything was going to fail tonight. The only thing working, the soundboard. Has Scott glitched out? No, you hadn't. I thought you'd glitched out there, dude.
No. I'm just observing. I'm just observing, my friend.
Look at him, cheeky grin. That's a super villain grin, man. That's the grin of a man that's opening portals to another world.
The whole Geordie thing threw me off. I was gonna go somewhere, and then Geordie just sort of he quantumly entangled my brain, made me forget what I was gonna say.
Did he put you in a trance, dude?
Damn you!
Damn you, Geordie. Yeah, so Friday the 13th, what the heck is all the fuss about, folks? There's various kind of thoughts behind which event it was exactly that makes Friday the 13th so unlucky. Personally, I think you can take anything that happened on the 13th or allegedly around the 13th on a Friday, and all of that added together is what gives this date, this magical date, its special bit of woo. But that in mind, I'm still very, very aware of what Scott was saying as well, that, you know, it could very well be a lucky number to some people, and it's crazy, it's weird, right? But first story here today is Friday the 13th, how cyclones, asteroids, and Buckingham Palace bombing have fed the superstition. So we'll get into a little bit of this, Scotty. We'll discuss some of it along the way. It's got some of the highlights, it's got some of the low notes, and myself and Scott will take it apart in our unique and wonderful fashion that we do, right? So it says Friday the 13th, the supposedly unluckiest day of the year, has arrived, with many Britons fearing what the day entails. 4 or 5 years with Boris Johnson at the helm, just saying. From walking under ladders and breaking mirrors to putting new shoes on a table and finding a lone magpie, we Britons are aware of several eerie superstitions, and in recent years, Friday the 13th has become a superstition in itself. But why is the day thought to bring bad luck? And how have the origins led to the increase in paranoia? Here is everything you need to know about the unlucky calendar date, including what to avoid and the perks that you can enjoy if you're willing to take a risk. So how often does it occur each year? Well, Scott, get a load of this. Friday the 13th occurs at least once a year, but no more than 3 times a year. In 2019, the unlucky first date appeared in September and also takes place today, the day after the general election. And in 2020, it falls in March and November. Oh, yes, there's another couple of shows we've got to look forward to next year then, Scott. You're muted up. Muted.
Ah, yes, there we go.
Rookie mistake, Scott.
Yeah, I was doing something on my computer and I didn't want Windows notification sounds blaring through, so I muted up. But yes, I always look forward to the Freaky Fridays that occur on Friday the 13th, right? It's always something I notice either right before we go on or whatever. I'm like, "Oh, it's the 13th." I'm like, "Well, it's that time. It's a
That time to dust off, dust off the old stories, Scott. They're always relevant. They always are. Where does Friday the 13th originate from? Oh, this is where we start to get stuff to get our teeth into, Scotty boy. It is uncertain how the key date became associated with bad luck, but the number 13 has been considered unlucky for some time, possibly as far back as the Middle Ages. Now, the day was first mentioned in English in a biography of Gioacchino Rossini, an Italian composer who died on Friday the 13th, November 1868. Thomas W. Lawson, an American businessman who also believed to have prolonged the superstition after his book Friday the 13th was published in 1907. And in the novel, an unscrupulous stockbroker takes advantage of the superstition to create a Wall Street panic. Scotty,
wow,
way back in 1907, Thomas W. Lawson, that cat knew the game.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Oh, we've got a super chat coming in. Yes, indeedy. Thank you so much, Star Dreamer. Really, really appreciated. Let's see it jumping in a minute. We'll get our little dancing pineapple. Yes, indeed. Hopefully we'll get our dancing pineapple, or I'm just going to have to go and do this manually. What the heck? There we go.
Happy to be chilling with my Freaky Fry Woo peeps. Much love to everyone.
Oh yeah, and much love to you too. Absolutely. I'm liking this, Scott. You know, we can fade things in and out, and oh, it's just delightful. I must admit, very cool.
Well, once you get that thing dialed in, dude, you're gonna be rocking and rolling. I mean, it's already sounding pretty good just for getting it set up on the fly, and but.
Like you say, Scott, like you say, this has been pretty much on the fly, you know? So,
yeah. So.
Looking forward to that. Hopefully, you will give me your very trained ear, sir, when we do it. And I'll share screens and I'll show you. It's weird. You do it all through a console, and it's pretty cool.
We'll get you dialed in, dude. We'll get you dialed in.
It's Friday the 13th. I thought I would leave it a bit weird today. Plus, as long as we've got my alter ego.
Kev, the soy boy.
As long as we've got him kicking about, I'm really quite happy. I am delighted with this. I'm going to do full videos in that voice. I think that's going to make my woke kind of stories, I think it's going to put them in a whole different tone. Anytime I quote somebody that's got some of these like really crazy ideas, Scott, I can just quote them in their own soy voice. Dude.
Doesn't Watson kind of do the same thing? You know, like
Oh
whenever he's
no,
reading
am I
quote-
turning into a
quotes
mini
out-
Watson? Oh no.
I think so. I think
Dude.
so. Okay.
Oh, I don't want to be a mini Watson. That boy's got a target on his back. Big time. Big time. Oh,
Yep.
hell yeah. So anyway, let us get back to our special day, shall we? It may
Yes.
even have biblical origins. Now, Scott, I must admit, this is one of the first ones that I had heard as the original source of so much of the negative, unlucky connotations surrounding this. When I was younger, I was always kind of, or at least I remember being told at some point it was the Last Supper. And that's what it talks about here. The Bible outlines the Last Supper on Monday, Thursday. We've got a new member coming in, La Curiosa. Awesome. Thank you so much, La Curiosa. And I'm really glad to get you into the YouTube memberships. I've got a Patreon page out there. I'm really one of the worst people on there for contributing original content to people. I set it up when we got demonetized before, over a year ago now. And it was a way for people to come in and support me at the time, and it was really great. But over time now, and that was before we had the YouTube memberships, and I'm really wondering if perhaps I should really... I wish I could give the Patreon members a membership, Scott. I think because I do so much YouTube work and very little Patreon, perhaps these people would be better placed coming over to the YouTube side of things. It's something I'm going to have to think about. Or I can stop being lazy and just do more work for Patreon, one of the two. But that's another story altogether. That's behind the scenes, not Friday the 13th stuff. Here we go. So then, on Monday, Thursday, which was attended by Jesus and his 12 apostles, including Judas, who betrayed him. The day after the 13 guests attended the supper was Good Friday, Jesus' crucifixion. As part of a Christian superstition, some believe the seating arrangement at the Last Supper was evil and it encouraged death. Now, according to some historians, other religious events have also taken place on this date, including the story of Adam and Eve. Now, I've got a problem with that because who wrote the calendar for Adam and Eve? How do they know that happened on a 13th? What did the snakes look? Do you see where I'm coming from here, Scott? Don't let facts like a calendar creator get in the way of somebody's belief system.
Did they just walk up to the tree and start flipping through the calendar that was pinned to the tree and today's the day you eat the apple?
I've got it, dude. The serpent brought a calendar with him, and Eve was choking to know what day it was. She just couldn't survive. Adam was refusing to even register that days existed, so Eve thought, I need a calendar, Scott. Where it all went wrong.
Kev, you're sounding a little mechanical. You sound kind of like C3. Is there a little reverb or something on your voice?
There might be. Hang on now. Let's see. There shouldn't be. How's that now?
I mean, it's not too bad, but you can kind of hear it. I think some people in the chat can kind of hear it too. Like I said, we'll have to work it out.
We'll work it out, Scott. Come on. We can work out stuff like that.
We'll get it, people. But hey, you can always say that. Is it really Kev that's on Freaky Friday today with us?
I think I know what it is. I think I know what it is. I think for some reason my mic is going through two channels. That's what I think it is. And I can set that up in a moment. I'll check that after we get to the next bit of the story, all right?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I just thought I would let you know.
No, Scott, no, because when I was listening to myself earlier, and people who don't do this kind of thing, you maybe don't know, but you hear yourself talking, and one of the things that the streamers who had this Go XLR piece of kit were saying was sometimes you hear like a reverb, and earlier on today I couldn't figure out if that was the natural reverb of this kit, Scott, or if it was going through 2 channels. But now, when I'm looking at the board, I'm seeing 2 equalizers flashing up and down when I talk. So.
I think that's what it is. So you sound like a Scottish C3PO, which is kind of cool. And or a Scottish Vader. How about that?
But there is a robot setting on this. Is it this one? I don't know if it's that one. Hang on, is that it? No, that's a different one.
Maybe.
No, maybe it's that one. I don't know. There's that many of them. Who knows? Let's get back into this. I'm sorry, folks. I'm sorry. So then, it says, according to some historians then, Adam and Eve, that's where we got to, right? I couldn't go past the fact that they probably didn't have a calendar. The Great Flood during the time of Noah and the confusion of the languages at the Tower of Babel, or Babel, depending how you pronounce it, folks. So, Scott, did you ever attribute the whole Friday the 13th to religious kind of ideas, things from the Bible?
That might have been where I first heard it being attributed to as well. I don't know for sure if it was the whole Last Supper thing or if it was the Templar thing. It was one of those two is where I first remember, like, when I was actually kind of like looking into the origins of Friday the 13th, or why it was so, what made it so popular, like why people attributed that to that date, that that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think it was like either the Last Supper or the Templar stuff is what I first heard of all that.
You see, it was only later that I found out about the Templar kind of thing, and that's what we're going to move into here now. And of course, Johnny Whistles, he's like our very own Templar, right? Sinclair, literally the family, the Saint Clairs of Templar history, which I think's pretty cool. That we've got our own Templar kicking around, and hopefully we'll get Johnny on the show again sometime soon. He's got a new piece of kit now as well, so I'm fingers crossed he's going to get that up and running, and we'll get a lot more Johnny Whistles, and he can tell us the truth about his ancestors, because it says here, one of the earliest events associated with Friday the 13th that dates back to October 1307, where officers of King Philip IV of France imprisoned and later executed hundreds of the Knights Templar, a religious military group who sought to defend the Holy Land, and probably you could blame for setting up the banking system as we know it, Scott.
Yeah, the Templars were a very, very, very powerful group.
I mean, this is where you got the people who are going over to the Holy Land, right? And as opposed to carrying their money across Europe and things, they would deposit it with somebody here or somebody in France at the Templar castle, and they would be given a promise, a note with a promise on it, Scotty. And that promise was, if you go into any other Templar kind of castle or bar around here or anywhere around the world, just you show this, my man, and that'll get you your gold back. Promissory notes. Don't they sound familiar? At least in those days, Scott, you got what was written on the note, right?
Yeah, at least back then it was backed up with something.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, the Templars had acquired a vast amount of wealth, like ridiculous amounts of wealth, like to the point to where kings and queens were starting to become a little bit jealous. Why are these Templars so rich and have all of this stuff? They're not kings, they're not queens.
Well, Scotty, let me ask you, right? Because this ties in with one of our favourite subjects as well, okay? Now, we know that they were basically helping people go over to Jerusalem, stuff like that. From time to time, periods throughout history, they occupied Jerusalem, We had the Crusades, all of that stuff going on. Do you think, on top of the banking, on top of the money they were making through what they were doing, do you think they got some crazy artifacts out of there? And again, we could go one step further and say the ones that escaped persecution in France and made their way to Scotland and Roslin, and I think they made their way across the Atlantic as well, and they came to a really, really, really innocuous kind of island at the time. It was probably 2 islands at the time, and they thought nobody in their right mind is going to check this place out. And now we have Oak Island. But do you think that that's where a lot of their power came from? Do you think the kings and queens in France and Europe knew that they had that holy relic that would have given... Imagine a king or a queen holding that, Scott.
I don't know if I believe that they found holy relics, and I believe that they found different artifacts, and that they probably transported them to different places around the world and had them hidden, right? Yeah, I think probably some of these people in royalty, these kings and stuff, might have had a pretty good idea of some of the artifacts or some of the things that the Templars found, and probably wanted a piece of that. It's very interesting because we see another group of bad guys in World War II, right, that were obsessed with finding artifacts and acquiring them for power. And so look, these guys are going to the Middle East, back in the day, these Crusaders, these Templars. And just imagine the kind of stuff that they're stumbling across, right? We think about it in our modern era, right, where a lot of these sites have already been, there's already archaeological digs going on. A lot of the stuff has already been plucked out of the ground, right? A lot of the stuff is already been moved to museums, and of course there's a lot more to discover. But can you imagine back then how much stuff that they were just stumbling across? Because there wasn't archaeological digs back then. That whole thing of just they were probably just coming across stuff in the desert and were like, whoa, what did we find here? It just makes you wonder, what did they find? What did the Templars have in their possession?
Now, I don't know the Bible really that good, Scott, but maybe you can help me here, because somebody in the chat room, Edward, he says, and I've heard about this before, right, where Jesus, he gets the whip out, he gets a bit kind of leery, he gets pissed, because there's people like doing money changing and all that kind of thing going on, right? But surely that can't be the Knights Templar, because you couldn't have been the Order of Knights of Christ when Christ was still kicking around. He wasn't worshipped then, right?
Those weren't the Templars.
Yeah, they were the Pharisees or something. Yeah.
That because the Templars came way after. Yeah.
It was just me there trying to get it ordered in my head. I wasn't saying Edward was getting it wrong or anything like that. It was more me trying to figure out, hang on, because I know Jesus did do that, or it said he done that.
You brought up banking and all of that stuff, with the Templars, but the concept of banking and all of that was even around way before them, obviously, but they were the ones that really kind of established what we would consider modern banking in that term, like
skimming off the top, taking a bit of interest, not all your gold being there when you go to pick it up.
Yeah. And in the case of Jesus, flipping tables and chasing the money changers out of the temple, right? I mean, they're pulling those little schemes, those little scams, and ripping people off, and the old big man wasn't having none of it. He's like, all right, it's time to bust out the whip, crack a few people. Got to be done sometime.
I think that would have been right up there. Remember we done a show about the Sikh Fight Club? Remember all those crazies going about with swords and things? I reckon that would have looked pretty similar to what was going on that the Bible
I don't
describes.
know. We had a listener or viewer, I guess. I don't know if it was a YouTube viewer or a.
Now,
or
here's
a
the thing, okay? The network are aware of the problem at TFR. They're working behind the scenes right now. I'm in touch with the network, so the minute we can go back live to the network, we will do so. It won't affect any of the flow here because we've still gone through the show the way that we had planned it. Well, I would say planned it the way the tabs are lined up that I've got open, Scott.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I don't know, man.
I know though, because let's move on to the next one, right? Because the Knights Templar, okay, that's one of the things that's attributed to this crazy date. And of course, if you're scared of this date, that means you suffer from something called paraskevidekatriophobia. It's probably butchered the pronunciation, but I wasn't saying it twice, Scott. There's no danger I was saying that twice. So yeah, so then, next up, we have the Second World War bombing of Buckingham Palace by German forces in September 1940, and the Bangladesh cyclone of November 1970, which unfortunately 300,000 people lost their lives on a Black Friday. Now, Scott, I feel quite bad. I know I shouldn't. It's not like I'm not carrying any guilt around with me or anything because of it, but I had never heard of this before.
I've heard of the Bangladesh cyclone.
Never heard of it, man.
Of course, I study weather, so I know about a lot of these.
That
weather
explains it. That'll explain it.
But it is definitely probably one of the most catastrophic weather events, to have mass casualties on that scale in modern history. I mean, because that's 1970, and it just shows, the when you have so many people, because India is the most populated as far as density is concerned. Population density on the planet is in India. And so you have so many people crowded and, so many in such a small area that I guarantee probably those 300,000 people, I would say the majority of them died in flooding from the storm. Not like they were picked up by the wind and killed or anything like that. That's just those storms cause so much issues with flooding, and when you have that many people in a densely populated area, you're gonna get mass casualties like that. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. It happened on Friday the 13th, huh?
Yeah, that's terrible.
Wow.
So then it goes on to say a Chilean Air Force plane disappeared in the Andes. Oh, that's not the one.
Ooh.
Oh, it is. It is the one. On Friday the 13th October 1972, with 16 survivors turning up 2 months later. They had been forced to do the unthinkable, folks. Yes, indeed. And that was made very infamous by a fantastic movie. One of my favourite movies, not because of the but well-made movie, about that incident, Alive. Really great. Have you seen that one, Scott?
Is this another incident? Because is the one that I believe that's the one with the soccer team, right?
The rugby team.
It was a rugby team.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this one's an Air Force plane. So was this a whole different situation?
I would say they were probably on the same plane. I'm thinking it's the same thing, dude.
Okay. I didn't know if it was like some kind of a military incident.
Let's see. Chilean, is it rugby team plane crash? And it is.
Oh, you're
13th October 1972.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, that was pretty horrendous, man. And the movie, I must say, the movie is what do you do? Like, what do you do if you're in that situation, Scott? You know what I mean? You're all looking at each other. It's inevitable. It's going to come to it. Hunger's going to take over. Oh, holy moly, man. Not good.
Yeah, I think at that point, like raw survival starts kicking in, and you start looking at who probably the weakest link
Oh well,
in
no,
the
I'd be
group.
looking at I'd be looking at who's got the most on them. There's not much pickings on me. You could maybe make some soup out of me or something. I don't know, but you're not going to get much of a steak out of this, Scott. I've got a BMI of 0. I've got 0 body fat, just 0, dude. There's none. Yante. Know what I mean? Not good, man. Not good. I'm not exactly the most muscular in the world, you know, so not good.
Maybe you'd be the guy that they choose to make like tools out of their bones. You know, like
No, maybe I'd be the guy who would think ahead early and think, I'm going to do the walk. I'm doing the walk. you lot are staying here, and you can have my knife and fork. It'll become relevant in the next couple of weeks. I'm out of here. That's what I'd say, Scott.
Yeah, what a hell of a position to be put in, right?
It's nobody can be judged for what happens in that situation.
No,
No.
you really can.
No, absolutely. So it says in 1976, good year, the 76ers, that's when I was born, New Yorker Daz Baxter was apparently so afraid on Friday the 13th that he decided the safest place to stay was his bed. Mr. Baxter was killed when the floor of his apartment block collapsed that day. Rapper Tupac Shakur died, or did he, of his wounds on Friday the 13th, September 1966, 6 days after being shot multiple times in a drive-by shooting. Now, Scott, that's one of those things. It's always had an air of mystery around it. It didn't take long after that happening for the conspiracy to really get going on that. And it's interesting as hell, dude. That whole rap scene when you get into like the behind the scenes stuff. Dude, that's crazy.
Yeah, the East Coast West Coast rivalry that was going on back in the 90s, and
so what do you think, man? I mean, did it go down the way we were told? I think it did. But who knows?
Yeah, I think Tupac was shot. I think he's dead. You see the thing resurfacing of Tupac spotted in Miami, or Tupac spotted in the Bahamas, or something like that. Nah, he got killed. He died.
He got juiced.
Yeah, he got juiced, and you really think Tupac's gonna sit around and let a hologram do his concerts for him? Nah, probably not. I think he would probably want to be there himself if he wanted to do something. He's not gonna let someone just roll his hologram around without cashing in on that.
Roll his hologram around. I like that. Somebody just keeps on some mad bit of disc just rolling around with him. Do you know what I mean? Brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. Hey,
but I'll tell you, a lot of these stars now, though, Scott, a lot of the stars now, Robin Williams springs to mind. I think he's one of the bigger names that had some kind of contract or some legal thing put in place where people cannot, like, reanimate him, like, use him after his death kind of thing.
That's what I'm saying. That's the whole thing now, to where people are trying to make sure that they secure their actual like rights to their image and everything. Because as this deep fake stuff and all of this stuff, the technology improves on this, it's going to come to a point to where they're not only going to be able to deep fake your face on a body, they're going to be able to scan hours of footage of, say, a celebrity in a movie, and be able to have these algorithms, these AI neural networks, recreate their bodies as well, because it's seeing the dimensions of their bodies through all of this footage, all of this pipe through, it'll be able to not only deepfake the face, I think it'll also be able to deepfake the entire body as well. And so at that point, when you have a data set like that on somebody, you really can kind of recreate them in any way you see fit, right? You could use this AI data set to say make I'm just gonna go there. Like, say you see a bunch of hours of footage of some actress, then boom, next thing you know, hey, you can make a total complete recreation like sex doll or something.
Well, look,
right?
The dude makes a brilliant point here, but I think we have to adapt it, right? Because, dude, he said we can no longer believe anything that we don't see in person. I'm actually getting to the point where unless you can physically touch it, you can't believe it, because the holograms are becoming so real, Scott. They look solid to the touch. And with the kind of things that you've been talking about, some of the tech, remember, it was almost like haptic and you could interact. Even then, you're getting to the point where it's almost touchable.
It is. They're giving holograms mass.
Brilliant. Brilliant comment, Polly. Love it.
Tupac is kaput.
Love it. Tupac backwards. I think that was pretty cool.
Tupac is kaput.
I like that. Yes, indeed. So yeah, a lot of people talking about cloning, stuff like that. I've seen people.
Before you go on, I think that story before the Tupac thing was interesting. So the guy was so scared of Friday the 13th, he literally had that fear, and he decided to stay home, and the roof collapsed on him.
Yep.
Now, do you think this could be a case of him putting so much intent on that day that he actually manifested a collapse that killed him?
I do, Scott. I do think that might have contributed something, but people will say, but logically, Kev, that roof was going to collapse anyway, and I can't deny that might have been the case. Nobody can really prove, Scott, that it didn't increase the likelihood.
Because in all likelihood, I'm just looking at it from the. I'm trying to think of it from his perspective.
Or is it like Final Destination? Ah, well, you didn't go out today. Well, we'll still get you in the house. Boom, roof gets it.
Well, you got to think, maybe if he was so terrified where he's like staying in the bed, he's probably sitting there like repeating in his mind, I'm going to die today. 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 You know what I mean? Like that's going over and over in his head. And when you keep putting that much thought into I'm going to die today or something like that,
it's not the kind of thing you want to be building up.
It's like almost like a telekinetic episode where maybe he just boom brought the roof. It's
almost like when you send ideas out there, it's almost like, you know how Tesla was the one that had the device, Scott, and basically if you could hit the right frequency, you could make things solid, very, very flexible, almost liquid-like. And then you have soldiers marching over the bridge. They have to break step because you can build up that resonant frequency. And I wonder if our ideas, on a similar sort of way, Scott, an idea has a frequency, it has a waveform. And I wonder if you do send out similar waveforms enough, then it does gain enough momentum, frequency, stuff we can't explain with our language, but it's something that's real.
I think so. You're putting out vibrations, right? We talk about that. Yeah, you're putting out frequencies, you're putting out vibrations.
Like ripples in a pond,
Yeah. And you gotta also think about like even when you see like kind of like old cheesy movies, right? When you have the guy with the telekinetic powers and he puts his finger to his head and you see the waves coming off his head, right? They get that from somewhere. People have obviously understood that you can send out signals. You can put out some kind of a wave or frequency, but with your thoughts. And isn't that essentially what those when they're doing all of this technology where you're using your mind to control prosthetics and all of that stuff, you put the skull cap on, that's picking up the frequencies coming from your head.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're literally transmitting frequencies that can be picked up by technology, and translated into something. So
You never think about your brain in that way. It's literally a transmitter of electrical signals.
yes,
Crazy,
it's all it is.
man.
It's a giant watery glob of cholesterol that has a whole bunch of electricity firing in it at any given moment.
Imagine that. That's all we are. That's what we boil down to, folks. A glutinous jelly blob of cholesterol. Isn't that great? Because, outside of the brain, really, all that exists is information. And it's the way our brain decodes the various forms of information that makes it feel so real. So sound is just audio waves, just waves. Light is just photons, packets of information. I wonder what the world would look like, Scott, if we could somehow take ourselves out and see the full kaleidoscope of colours and lights and everything going on. We would look round and go, you have got to be shitting me. You mean it's like that? It's that easy? What? I don't know, dude. I don't know if you'd think that right enough. I don't know.
It would be information overload. You wouldn't even be able to comprehend it. Mind wouldn't even be able to register what you were looking at, kind of thing. It's almost like have you ever seen those colorblind people that they see color for the first time using those special glasses? And it's almost like every time they immediately start having a emotional overload. It's actually a information overload, and they can't process it, so they start crying.
It's like when you have one of these cochlear implants as well, people hearing for the first time. I watched a video of a baby the other day getting that, a few months old, but still the first time it had obviously ever heard anything, Scott. I don't know, it's goosebumps even thinking about it, it's just...
Yeah, it's really cool, So
take that shit for granted, man. You take that for granted so much, and it's just, wow. You see somebody who's been deprived it, and the way they look when they get it, dang, dude.
Yeah,
you feel all warm inside.
I think it's the same way. If our filters were taken off and we were able to see the full spectrum of light, right, and all of the different things that just we cannot perceive, it would be information overload. I don't think we could handle it.
Edward, it's not Inspector Clouseau, it's Coney. It's Coney, man. Well, that's not Coney. He's Coney. I don't know what this one's called, Scott. Somebody was trying to figure out if it was Inspector Clouseau or not.
We got to find a name for
gotta
him.
Find a suitable name. Hi, ho, don't even go there. Don't put stereotypes onto my crocheted inanimate object.
I'm sorry.
Let they decide what they want to be, Scott.
See, Mothman is already whispering in my ear in the corner, telling me, I should have thought before I assumed.
This is the kind of thing that we've had to deal with for years. I didn't even consent to be born here in the first place, but then I had to grow up and identifying as a boy. And don't be putting all these stereotypes and pressure on Kev's toys.
There you go, Scott, you see.
King Sweet in the chat. Stony
and Coney.
Stony and Coney.
I think we have a christening to do. Oh, there's me assuming belief systems now. Tut. My bad. Let's get back to we've got a bit more about Tupac, and I was noticing people in the chat room. It's quite split. It's one of these subjects, right? The whole cloning thing as well was getting discussed in the chat room. And Eminem's name came up, and this cloning thing around pop stars and Hollywood. It's something that comes up all the time.
It's a very split, there's a lot of people on either side of it, you
Yeah.
know, and I can see both sides.
Same here.
I just tend to lean towards the, well, I think he's dead.
Do you know what I think is quite interesting when it comes to the cloning side of things, and always makes people really pause and think? It's when you find out that Madonna, you know, she travels around in her world tours and everything else, and she stays in the best of hotels. She's Madonna. She's a billionaire. Maybe not now, I don't know, but Princess of Pop at one time, and still now to this day, she takes a forensic team of cleaners with her. Why does she take a forensic team of cleaners, Kev? Because she makes sure that there's no DNA left anywhere that she stays. So why are you so paranoid about your DNA, Scott? You know, you go to the eyes wide shut type parties, you rub shoulders with the type of people that put you in the position to be the Madonna in pop. You know, you're going to the right parties, you're doing the right things. What on earth's name are you so scared about people getting a hold of your DNA for? The mind boggles, my friend.
Very interesting, right? Very interesting to sit there and think about why. What's
Why?
Who
knows? Maybe at one time they wanted to use her for some moonchild magic.
Yeah.
I would imagine that's probably one of the deals you do to get to that level of pop.
And I don't think Madonna's taking any sort of 23andMe DNA test.
No. I don't think so. Wouldn't say she's giving it up that willy-nilly. No, sir. So then, it says rapper Tupac Shakur. We got that bit. More recently, the 13.5 million Saw ride at Thorpe Park, Chertsey, was scheduled to open on Friday the 13th March 2009, but was shut down due to a computer fault. Plus, on Friday the 13th January 2012, the Costa Concordia cruise ship crashed off the coast of Italy, killing 30 people. Nearly 4.
Ouch.
Yeah, exactly. I remember that one. Yeah.
I remember that too. So they got a double whammy. They got a double whammy of Friday the 13th and 2012.
Yep. Dang. So nearly 4 years ago, the Black Pajama Gang organised 7 simultaneous really bad things in Paris on Friday, the 13th November 2015, leaving 130 people not going home and hundreds wounded. It also rumoured that an asteroid will come within 22,000 miles, Scotty boy, of the Earth on Friday the 13th in April 2029. A coincidence?
Perhaps.
My asteroid card is back in play.
You love the asteroid card, don't you?
I don't know, Scott, but you got to admit, right? You got to admit that there's a heck of a lot of asteroid talk going on. Like maybe it's just because we threw it out there. I don't know.
It definitely is quite a popular topic.
Well, I've got no reason to believe that Dr. Carol Rosen was making that up. And when you look at the series of events that she described, that she heard from Werner von Braun while she was at NASA, he was at NASA, and of course he was part of Project Paperclip, the bad guys that got to live out their lives in comfortable jobs. You know how that goes. I tell you what, Scott, you know, it seems to be playing out pretty much on a line with that. And now, admittedly, the whole kind of Cold War, that had already been. Carol could have obviously got that one. But the whole rogue nations and then the asteroids, and I don't know, dude, it feels right.
And this is for ushering in a new world order, right?
It'll be a series of events.
Yeah. And so you would have to get the population to rally around something so that they could come together under one banner, right? That there was this existential threat that threatens all of humanity, and so we all have to come together kind of moment. Yeah, I mean, definitely the asteroid thing is one of those events that would cause something like that, right? So, and it is discussed a lot as being this existential threat that eventually we all are going to have to find a way to come together to deal with a potential. Yeah.
Well, here she is. It's one of my favorite clips. I must admit, I love this clip, dude. Here we go, Carol Rosen.
Good morning. My name is Carol Rosen. In 1974, after being a 6th grade school teacher, I was introduced to the late Dr. Werner von Braun in the U.S., the father of rocketry.
I can't hear it.
In my first meeting with him...
Can we not hear it?
I can't hear it.
Can't hear that. I wonder if the audience were hearing it.
If they can hear it, then that's fine. I'm just letting you know that I can't hear anything.
Yeah, I'll try and get that one fixed around. I'll see if the chat room were hearing it, and I'll play it. So if you were hearing it, let me know, chat. Let me in on the secret. This is the little things that will iron out over the next couple of days, Scotty boy.
Yes. The joys of new audio equipment, people.
There's like multiple channels and multiple things, and oh, it's crazy biscuits.
They heard it. They heard it. So you can go ahead and just play that.
Sorry, I was just checking the network there. I think Brent Thomas, the Paranormal Portal, is still going to be on TFR. I think they've got it fixed by the looks of it. There'll be the Paranormal Portal. It will be live at the usual time of 3 a.m. in the UK, 10 p.m. on the East Coast, and that is 7 p.m. on the West Coast. And listen, I don't know if you checked it out, but Scott Lopez was on there last week. It was fascinating. It was like a whistle-stop tour of so much woo. I don't know if you could even list it all. Great work, Scott. I really enjoyed it, man.
You know, I'm definitely gonna have to come back, and I'm gonna make some regular appearances on the Paranormal Portal, because honestly, 2 hours is not enough for Brent.
He's a good guy. He's just like us, dude. It's so easy just to get talking, and oh, it's crazy.
Yeah, you know, because I had to take a small little break after Freaky, about a 30-minute break, and then go on with Brent. So I actually had an hour and a half on with him, and you know, these days with as long as we've been doing this and stuff now, I'm at hour and a half is nothing. That we were just starting to get into some good stuff, and it was like, oh no, show's over, you know. So yeah, it was an excellent show. We got into all kinds of craziness. So got into the craziness that was happening around here, and looking at UFOs from different angles and from a supernatural,
interdimensional kind of woo
perspective. Yeah,
it went everywhere, dude.
A lot of good conversation.
Yeah, it went everywhere. Oh, I'm going to play this out. Unfortunately, Scott, you'll just have to watch Carol. You'll have to do a bit of lip reading. It's not a long clip. It gets to the good bit really early. Here we go.
During that first 3.5 hours, he said to me, Carol, you will stop the weaponization of space. And I said, you know, teachers don't stop until June. He said, no, you have to understand. This is February. And we have to prevent the weaponization of space because there is a lie being told to everyone that the weaponization of space is now first being based upon the evil empire, the Russians. There are many enemies, he said, against whom we're going to build this space-based weapon system. The first of whom was the Russians, which was existing at that time. Then there would be terrorists. Then there would be terrorists. Then there would be terrorists. Then there would be third world countries. Now we call them rogue nations or nations of concern. Then there would be asteroids. And then he would repeat to me over and over. And the last card, the last card, the last card would be the extraterrestrial threat.
Yes, Scotty, the last card will be the extraterrestrial. Woo!
I was about to say, you know, since I couldn't hear it, I was trying to, because I've seen the clip before, and I was trying to remember what the list of cards was, and so it was like Rogue Nations, then
Russia.
then
You've got Russia, then you've got the Rogue Nations.
yeah, Russia, Rogue Nations, then bad guys in pajamas running around everywhere, and then asteroids,
And then the
and
last
then
card. The last card, Scott.
the last card, Kev. The last card. It's the alien threat.
Yes, indeed it is. Whether it plays out that way, folks, I don't know. I really don't. But let's get back into this. What do you think, Scott? Will it?
We had Reagan saying, sometimes I would often think what would happen if there was an extraterrestrial threat and how it could bring everyone together. And I'm like, very interesting for a president to be talking like that, So I think with some of that in mind, and that in context, maybe there is something to this. Maybe there is something to these cards being played, Kev.
I heard Clyde Lewis talk about this one time as well. And the whole Reagan thing, fascinating. But you know what I think is even more interesting, or what makes it even more interesting, is Clyde was talking about how Gorbachev, he was asked about Reagan's comments, about what he said about the alien threat and stuff like that. And what Gorbachev said, Scott, was very interesting, because he said, he's got a point, it's just not the right time. Words to that effect. I mean, obviously he didn't say it in a Glasgow accent, but paraphrasing.
Yeah.
He didn't rubbish it. He just, the emphasis though was it's just not right. Not now. This isn't the time for it. Almost as if it was known that at some point down the road.
It's not. Yes, he knows it's not time to pull that card yet. That's basically
he had
what
a list of the cards, and Reagan had lost a couple. He had missed out in pajamas, and he thought we were going straight to the asteroids, dude.
Gorbachev probably called him up and he's like, "Damn it, Reagan, who shuffled your cards? Who shuffled the cards?
I'm telling you,
order."
Telling you. There's something in it. So here we go. We go back to this. So, do people really fear this superstitious day? Ah, yes. Here we go. If you find yourself worrying about Friday the 13th approaching, you're not alone. Experts found the fear of Friday the 13th is widespread, and psychologists have even gone as far as to naming the fear paraskevidekatriophobia. From the Greek word paraskevi, meaning of Friday.
See, Kev, you can nail that flawlessly from here on out. You've technology people. Round of applause.
I even had Ric Flair going, "Whoa, I'm going to kick your ass." But I've obviously written over the top of it. I'll get it back. It's all good, Scott. It's all good. So it says Dr. Caroline Watt of the University of Edinburgh, no less, says that it is the belief in Friday the 13th superstition that could, in fact, prove the greatest risk to the average person. Aha! She said, if people believe in the superstition of Friday the 13th, then they believe they are in greater danger on that day. As a result, they may be more anxious and distracted, and this could lead to accidents. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I thought she was going to go full woo. She went half with us. I thought she was going to go the whole 10 yards, Scott. And she was going to say, well, actually, if you think about this, it could cause some standing wave in the quantum field. And
I don't think Dr. Caroline Watt of the University of Edinburgh was willing to go.
If she had been, she'd have had a new student enrolling in the summer.
Yes, she wasn't ready to jump that deep, into the deep end of the woo pool. But
dipped her toe in it, though.
If she was willing to go there, I'd have been like, Kev, jot down that name and see if you can get somebody on the show.
Imagine it, dude. A PhD in woology. Oh man, that'd be awesome.
Hey, I beg to argue that you have a PhD in woology.
Scott Lopez for every ounce of woology that I do or do not possess, you have an equal amount of woo in you.
It just proves that we don't need to.
We don't need
go
letters after our name to know that we're good at the woo.
Yes. We don't need that piece of. We don't need that piece of paper
Hey.
giving us our credentials.
Who needs letters after their name? Right then. Let's see then. It goes on to say, it is like telling someone they are cursed. If they believe they are, then they will worry. Their blood pressure will go up, and they put themselves at risk. Strange superstitions. This should be good. In Somerset, it is said that whoever turns a bed on Friday turns ships at sea. In Somerset, it is said that whoever turns a bed on Friday turns ships at sea. Okay.
What?
So in Somerset, nobody makes their bed on a Friday because nobody wants to be accused of making ships at sea, right? I don't get that one. But hey, it is what it is. If to all our Somerset listeners who are, you know, it is what it is. So it says in Cumbria, babies born on a Friday were laid on the family Bible. In some areas, calling a doctor for the first time on a Friday is a certain omen of death, Scott. Oh, my word. Calling a doctor on a Friday, who knew? Cutting hair and nails on a Friday is a certain path to misfortune, and many couples will refrain from marrying on a Friday. It's also considered very unlucky for 13 people to dine together, and it's believed that the first to rise will reach serious misfortune. A superstition upheld by US President Franklin D. Roosevelt. He also refused to travel on Friday the 13th, and apparently Winston Churchill refused to sit in row 13 on a plane or at the theatre. And you even get hotels, they don't do a 13th floor, Scott. They just don't do it.
Yeah, they'll just skip it. They'll just go from 12 to 14.
Yeah.
I mean, so it is a deeply ingrained thing, you know.
And again, have we created that thing? Is the belief in it what fuels whatever it is that makes it unlucky in the first place?
Yeah, it becomes sort of this self-feeding feedback loop, right?
It's weird, right?
Where you keep focusing on the 13th and then things keep happening on the 13th, so then it causes you to focus on the 13th more, and then things happen more on the 13th, and it just keeps going. Oh, you know, it's just this.
Where attention goes, energy flows. It's the old saying,
Yes.
right? Yeah. So
I
then,
think we've created a Friday the 13th perpetual motion machine.
nice. Right here on Freaky Friday, folks. Exactly. You only hear these things here, Scott. You know, like traffic cones and all the other stuff we get into. I tell you, man, the influence of Friday the 13th on business. So it says the Stress Management Center and Phobia Institute, North Carolina, found that between $700 and $700 and $800 million is lost every Friday the 13th due to people refusing to travel, make large purchases, or operate their businesses as normal. On Friday the 13th, October 1989, a day that was later dubbed as Black Friday, the $6.75 billion buyout deal for United Airlines Company led to the crash of global markets. Now, you can't tell me, Mr. Lopez, that with all of the historical banking stuff connected to Friday the 13th, i.e. Templars and all that woo, and the absolute controlling of the stock market to crash and to boom whenever they decide to do it, you can't tell me they weren't aware that they were doing it purposely on a Friday the 13th, right?
Yeah, these market crashes and all of that, that's all planned. They know that it's coming ahead of time, and it's just a matter of when they decide that they're going to pull the trigger on it, right?
It's
And
never the big boys. It's never the billionaires that lose out when there's a market crash. It's always the wee guy, right? How does that happen? They've got more money in the markets. Surely, logically, they should lose more. Unless they know what's happening ahead of time. Rigged game, I say. Go figure.
so yeah, this market crash was obviously planned for that day, or scheduled for that. And once again, we're dealing with people. We're dealing with the elites, right? We're dealing with the upper echelon, and hey, they believe in all this numerology stuff. Just because you don't doesn't mean that they don't, because they do. And so they look at these dates and they look at this stuff, and they decide that they're going to make their decisions on them. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me in the least that they decided to crash the market on a Friday the 13th
Big
for
time.
whatever reason.
For whatever reason. Because they can. Because they can, Scott. So then, he goes on to say, some hotels and airports are purposely avoid using the number 13, like we talked about a moment ago. And it talks about buildings in Manhattan, New York, and Brooklyn, New York. 5% of mid-rise and high-rise residential condo buildings in Manhattan have, so 95% don't. Wow. That's pretty staggering, dude. Some hotels and airports also purposely avoid using the number 13, while an analysis conducted by City Realty found that fewer than 5% of mid-rise and high-rise residential condo buildings in Manhattan, New York, and Brooklyn, New York have a 30. Yeah, so 95% of buildings don't have it. I mean, it makes no difference the way they number them in the end of the day. I mean, it's not as if, like, whoever's building the apartment block, they're losing out on a floor's worth of money, Scott.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's interesting that people go to these lengths, right? That shows you how scared. I mean, they say that it's unlucky to walk under a ladder, but we've never, like, 95% of workmen don't get rid of ladders, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, how often are you walking under ladders anyways? It's kind of a rare thing to begin with. I mean, who's just going out of their way to walk under a ladder that somebody's staying on? I think that in general, that's an unlucky thing to do, because that just causes an accident.
And if anything drops on you when you do walk under a ladder, that's on you. That wasn't anything to do with some, like, oh, thank you very, very much, Spooky Andy. Great name.
Spooky Andy.
Yes,
Awesome.
great name. So let's get back to it then. According to Old English folklore from the 1800s, couples who get married on a Friday are doomed to a cat and dog life. Wow! This old belief, combined with the widespread fear of the unluckiest day of the year, has meant booking a wedding on a Friday the 13th can be cheaper for couples. It's not just the wedding that becomes unpopular on this superstitious date. Property sales and transactions also tend to fall. Findaproperty.com discovered that between 2005 and 2012, there were 43% less transactions on Friday the 13th compared with other Fridays in the month. And over the past few years, it has emerged that the cost of air travel does indeed fall on the spooky date that comes around twice a year, with the savings attributed to a collective fear of flying on the unluckiest day of the year.
Hey, you hear that, people? If you want to get some good travel deals, if you want to hop on a plane and get a good thing, just book it for Friday the 13th. And just don't put any intention on that number, and just think of it as any other day, and man, you'll be good to go. You'll be saving some cash, and you probably won't have to deal with as many people flying and all of the hubbub, so pretty interesting. I think it's important to also find ways of taking advantage of this situation, right? Taking advantage of this some of this irrational fear of Friday the 13th and just do a little judo on it and flip it in your favor. You know what I mean?
So we're all about here, Scotty. Life hacks and superstitious loopholes. We'll keep you right, folks. We'll keep you right for the apocalypse, I'm telling you. So are there any countries out there that don't consider Friday the 13th to be unlucky and are looking at Britain and the US right now going, what the heck is this lot all about? In Italy, the number 13 is believed to be a lucky number, and they consider Friday the 17th to bring bad luck. Similarly, in Greece, Friday the 13th isn't feared, but instead Tuesday the 13th is an unlucky date. And in China, whatever day the government tells you's unlucky, you better believe it's unlucky or you ain't getting to travel anywhere any day. Oh, sorry. In China, the number 4 is considered to be unlucky, as in Chinese, it is nearly pronounced as the same word as death. The number 4, he hears dead people.
That made me think of something funny. I'll have to tell you later after the show.
Scott, is this mic good for ASMR? Could I do one of those really good videos now?
Well,
put the gate down a bit. Yeah.
Well, currently you sound like a robot doing ASMR.
I know. We'll get rid of the robot, dude. Maybe that's it. Maybe. No, maybe a little bit.
A little bit. It's not horrible, but it's definitely not ASMR worthy. Let's put it that way.
Awesome. We'll get there though. Welcome to the KBS ASMR channel. I can see it happening, dude. I can see it.
Hey, maybe you could tap into a new ASMR market, Kev. Maybe you could go through.
Look at this, dude. What the
heck is going on?
What the hell, man? Dearie me. Oh, man. Shh. What is that, dude? Is that like some kind of shaved Boris Johnson or something? I don't know what it is. So it says here the influence of Friday.
Needs to listen to some more ASMR.
Friday the 13th, things you didn't know about the movie. I don't want to know if that thing's going to be jumping out at you. Imagine, no offense to like, I don't want to like ugly shame the monster or anything, but that's scary, dude.
It's Jason Voorhees.
Remember we had that guy on from like Friday the 13th part 5? Remember on the Freaky Friday, dude? Remember he played the cop in one of the Friday the 13th, John O'Brien or something his name was, remember?
Oh, did we?
Yeah, remember like ages ago?
Yeah, I think I do vaguely remember that.
Because remember we were going to like read out a part of the script from the movie and things for the start of the show and that.
Wow.
Yeah, see, we've been there. We've brushed our shoulders against Hollywood heavyweights from Halloween 5. Friday the 13th 5. I can't remember, but it was good. It was good, dude. Right, anyway, back to this. The superstitious date certainly had an influence on the release of the horror movie Friday the 13th. Oh, do you think Friday the 13th might have influenced a movie called Friday the 13th? Dang, it would take me ages to figure that one out. I might have missed that, Scott. That had any influence on the titling of that film. I'm just saying.
Did you know that Christmas had an influence on, any movie that says Christmas in the title? I'm just throwing it out there.
Are you trying to tell me that? It's not working now. I figured out something, Scott. It's okay. It's good.
Okay.
Right then, the superstitious date, we got that. It is one of the most popular superstition films in history, with its success leading to further films, a television series, several books and popular merchandise. The unluckiest day of the year also has become a significant social media trend, with many online users discussing their fears or adding humour to the day by using hashtag Friday the 13th. So yeah,
well, you know,
we're almost there, Scott. We've got one more to go. On you go.
okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, well, you know that they would have to go ahead and start a hashtag movement around Friday the 13th. It was inevitable.
I'm
Friday
smiling.
the 13th can't escape the modern social media frenzy. So yeah, hashtag Friday the 13th, Kev.
No, I'm smiling, Scott, because I'm rapidly heading over to the title of this video to put a hashtag Friday the 13th in it.
See, there you go. Even Kev sees it's become algorithm. You got to get those algorithms in there, man.
Loves ourselves some algorithms here, folks. We
Algo
really do.
sees all.
We're all about the algo. So, what about the good things that happened on this inauspicious date? Here are a few worth remembering. After every Friday the 13th comes a Saturday the 14th, which can only mean one thing. The weekend is upon us. Holy heck, man. This writer must have been losing the will to live by this point. The first nudist colony was founded in the UK. Britons were allowed to let it all hang out when the North Devon Club and Metherell opened on June the 13th. Friday again. 1930. Dang, you wouldn't think they would let it all hang out in 1930s UK. You'd think it'd be a bit prim and proper back then, Scott, you know? I say, please, he's got his Jim and the twins out. Darling, don't look now, but her vajiji's hanging out.
Pip, pip, chitty-o.
Jolly good day, old boy.
You're looking jolly today.
Oh, dearie me. Dearie. So it says, plus Hollywood officially arrived on Friday the 13th. The Hollywood sign, which originally read Hollywood Land, was unveiled on Friday the 13th, July 1923. It was built to advertise a housing development. Didn't know that, but it's since become one of the world's biggest tourist attractions. I didn't actually know that, Scott. There you go.
No, I didn't know that either. Very, very interesting that the Hollywood sign was.
Oh, you want the synchronicity? And I just put the TV flicking through the channel to look for a movie to watch. You know what came on, don't you? You know what came on, Scott? Friday the... Oh, in fact, it gets even worse than that. She just turned Netflix off. And what channel was on? Friday the 13th movie. Ooh. Booga booga. There you go.
Yeah.
Imagine that, eh? So yeah, that was our Friday the 13th. We've got other little Friday the 13th stuff there as well. But how about we break it up with something even weirder? I found something really strange today. Oh, Lance, thank you so much, brother. Awesome. Now, from time to time, in the past, Scotty boy, we've looked at things like the strange sounds. Some call them the sky trumpets, things like that. We've taken a look at other anomalous behaviour that goes on in the natural world as well. And one of the things that we've talked about a number of times, that I can think of anyway, would be the whole situation of mass bird die-offs. Right? So we've had a mass bird die-off happening, and it's not just any website telling us, it's the mysterious universe. So we'll take a little look at this and we'll discuss what we think might be or might not be happening. And for all of our Welsh listeners, of them we have many, Susie, Half Q, I think ZX is there as well, I believe, I could be wrong. Many more. This is in Wales in the UK. So it says, things mysteriously fall from the sky is one of the classic Fortean phenomenon, or things mysteriously falling from the sky, sorry. Birds dying from no apparent cause is another. That winning or losing combo occurred this week in a rural town in Wales, and no one has yet been able to explain the hundreds of dead starlings, many with their internal organs outside their bodies, found on an unclassified road near Llewellyn. I butchered the name of it. Llewellyn, probably. In Bodydurn of Anglesey, an island off the northwest coast of Wales. Now, with mysterious circumstances and no official explanation, strange and conspiratorial theories abound. Quote, there's easily more than 300 of them. I counted 150 last night, but I gave up as there's just hundreds of them littered everywhere. It's as if they just dropped down dead from the sky. Now, David Edwards reported on social media that his partner, Hannah Stevens, found the birds while driving home. She claimed that on the afternoon of December the 10th, she had seen a massive flock flying overhead before landing to eat something on the road. Less than an hour later, she said they were dead where they had been eating. It's not clear how she arrived at the short time frame from flying to dead on the road. Quote, it's very strange, I can't put my finger on it. There are still some alive in the hedges today, but it's all unexplained at the moment. As seen in Edwards' video and photos, see them here and here, the vast majority of dead birds were in the road where he counted 150 before quitting. Now, North Wales Police Rural Crime Team counted at least 225, and some witnesses said over 300. They collected the carcasses, identified as starlings, and sent some to the lab for examination and toxicology tests, which means they assumed the birds were somehow poisoned. Locals were not sure. It's unlikely that the birds would have been in contact with an aircraft, RAF or civilian. Bird strikes have or can have an effect on aircraft and can cause severe damage. Even minor bird strikes are reported as a matter of course at RAF Valley, and no such reports have been fed back by our personnel. Weird one, Scott, right?
Very strange. And you're seeing this all over the place. I dropped another link into Skype because it immediately made me think of this as well, because this happened.
Hang on, Carolina. Birds.
If you just actually type in NASCAR Hall of Fame birds, you'll get that. But yeah, there was like hundreds of birds that just crashed into the NASCAR Hall of Fame building for no apparent reason. Like just slamming into the glass and killing themselves. And it was after dark, so it was happening in the night, which is also really weird because birds usually aren't that active during the evening.
You know, I've noticed that a lot though, Scott, where I am anyway. And we're in a city here, but you hear birds chirping all night long now. Like all night long. It's weird.
It's weird. Well, you are in a city with a lot of lights, so it could be confusing them, and they probably their day-night cycles are probably messed up.
And we've got the LED lighting in Glasgow for the smart city.
Yeah, yeah. So I think when you're in a large city like that, I think a lot of the wildlife within the city, it probably messes with them at some level, you know, where it's hard for them to distinguish day or night, especially if they're in a really lit up area like a park or something like that. But we've seen these incidents happening, right, where we have these like flocks of birds that just all of a sudden die. It's almost like I almost akin it to colony collapse of like bees.
Yeah.
It's a very similar sort of phenomenon where it's just like 1 minute they're all flying, there's hundreds of them, and then boom, next thing you know they're gone or they're dead. You know what I mean? And
we had one It was around Boxing Day, around 2012. Then it happened exactly the same place, the next year. On Boxing Day again, it was like a year apart. It was a small town in America. A few years ago now, because that's when I started to really watch what was going on. And anytime these stories come up, there's so much that we could like talk about. But some of the kind of theories are coming up here. So I think it'd be good to get into that and we can discuss them, because it says the Ministry of Defence answered speculations that the bird had been hit by low-flying planes with that denial. On the act of God side, there was talk that the birds might have been caught up in strong winds or stunned by a sudden lightning strike or loud sound. But Hannah Stevens did not report any unusual conditions. The current cause of all bad things, 5G, was blamed, but no other birds or wildlife seemed to be affected. A sign of the apocalypse? We're still here, and so are the residents of Llyn Llywelyn. I think I got it right that time. We're hearing one story that it happened in exactly the same place many, many years ago. So we're just trying to confirm that as well. Now, if that did happen in the same place years ago, that's quite interesting. Once, okay, but same place? I don't know, that's weird, right?
Yeah, I mean, could we be possibly talking about an energy field or something in this area that the birds are flying into, and then it's killing them? Like it's doing something to them? Like, are we talking about maybe some kind of natural energetic
some
area,
vortex? Yeah,
right?
Who knows? It's turning them inside out, dude.
That's really strange, though, that it's like, was it their internal organs were found on their outside, almost like they threw up their insides or something like that? It's really bizarre. It's a really, really weird. And these are starlings, right? I wonder if the birds that were hitting the NASCAR building, if they were starlings as well. I notice a lot of these incidents involve starlings, which I think is kind of interesting. I think we're looking at like a species here, like this bird species. I think we're looking at one of these species that literally are, I mean, no pun intended, kind of like the canary in the coal mine, right? That there's something affecting these birds, and I'm of the belief that it has to do with the magnetic field of the planet. I think their navigation and all of their magnetic sort of tracking in their brain is getting scrambled, and it's confusing them, and it's causing irrational behavior in the birds, right? I think that's what happened with these birds that were hitting the NASCAR building. Yeah. I just think that their compass was thrown off, and they just kind of, they do what their brain tells them to do. And if the direction, because it's not like a learned thing with birds, right? This is an evolutionary thing. And wherever they feel a magnetic north or south or whatever pulling on their brain, they're going to direction, no questions asked, because that's what they do. And if their compass was thrown off or something was causing them to do something erratic that they couldn't control, of course, you would see a bunch of them slamming into a building, full speed, because they're just flying, thinking they're flying, they're going full bore, and then boom, they just smack into something, kills them, So I think there's something going on that's just causing like this interference in their brain. This things are thrown out of whack, and I think we need to be paying attention to this stuff, because that obviously means that something is going on with the planet, that something is going on with the magnetic field that is not normal. We've seen the magnetic pole drifting more towards Siberia. It's in a really off position right now, and it's continuing to drift that way. And just makes me wonder how far it's going to go, and are we going to see an increase in stuff like this too? I also think some of this has to do with the the bee stuff as well. I mean, I know Stamets was talking about that there's a problem with this virus that's spreading among bee colonies, right? I watched his last interview with Rogan.
Awesome.
It was
Can you hear me still,
very
Scott?
good
Yeah.
stuff.
How do I hear?
Yeah.
Does that sound better now?
You sound good now.
I figured out the setting. I figured it out. I've got it now.
There we go, people. RoboKev has left the building.
RoboKev is no more. RoboKev is gone.
Oh,
People in the chat room.
Silky smooth, my friend.
Does it sound good? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I must admit, now I can't hear myself twice, and it's lovely. Oh my word! Yes, indeed.
Hey, at least we got your audio dialed in before the show, and then we just had to figure out that little channel issue.
Let's see. Yeah. Now we can talk like that. Does that sound good? Is that good for when I do my soy boy announcements? Hey, everyone. Welcome to the safe space.
Yes, Mr. Baker. We can do that.
Mr. Lopez has toys too. Oh, this could be fun. This could be so fun.
Yes, I have toys as well, Kev.
Robocone Baker. Yes, Kev is a Selkie. What's a Selkie? Cricket can listen again finally. Yes, I think everybody is now very, very relieved that Kev found. Scott, you'll be able to tell the listeners, look at the amount of settings I had to go through here. Like, it's
the old.
It's not easy. It's not easy.
It looks a lot like my mixer software, kind of. You know.
That was a hassle, dude. That was see that way when you could tell it was just one setting. It's one setting, and it just bugged me. I couldn't leave it alone. I've been distracted the whole while. So
you see that, people? That is the sacrifice that we put ourselves through to give you top quality KBS.
the dude says, "Am I just too stoned, or was that Kev?"
No, dude, I don't know what you're talking about.
Brilliant. Oh, dearie.
So yeah, man. Look, I think these mass die-offs of birds. Look, it's all tied in. The mass die-offs of the birds, the colony collapse of the bees, the whales that have been beaching themselves. You know, we also talk about the aquatic, die-offs going on in the oceans as well. I mean, that's all tied into this. And it always seems like it's these animals that are very, very sensitive to magnetic navigation, have these sort of migratory traits to them. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about it. I just think something's going wonky with the magnetic field.
I'm with you, dude. I'm with you all the way, Scott. I can't explain it totally. I don't know what's going wrong with the magnetic field, but could be totally wrong. But I think there's something magnetic in nature. I find it weird though, how when these things happen, usually it's confined to just one species or one type of bird, Scott, as opposed to it being widespread, which somewhat takes away from the magnetic effect, maybe. I don't really know how that all works.
Well, I think we're dealing with here is we're talking about a species that is extra sensitive. And like I said, so they're acting as a canary in the coal mine. But I think as this increases, it's going to start affecting other migratory birds that right now it's probably not having so much of an effect on. And I mean, and do we really know? Just because we can't visually see that it's not having effect, maybe it is in a more subtle way that we're just not picking up on. But I think like these starling birds, I think that there's something they're super sensitive to this stuff, and so it's easy for them to be affected by this. And not only that, I think we're also dealing with a cascading effect of we can't just equate it to one thing either. We can't just say, oh, it's magnetics. I think that I think that these species, that these animals are being bombarded from all angles, right? And then you throw in some natural magnetic pole shift on top of all of that. It becomes too much for them. It overwhelms them and they can't handle it. So
Indeed. Indeed.
Yes.
I was just looking at the chat room. Bill O'Connell talking about somebody live streaming about the chemtrails. Yes, we were talking about that on the show last night, actually. I don't know about where you are, Scott, but over here, I tell you what, man, it's not as bad or as crazy when it comes to the lines in the skies that I've seen it over the years. And I'm not saying, oh, it's okay now, then everything's, but you can't, it's not as bad as it was.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It seems
same
like
with
they've
you?
yeah, it's been the same here. I haven't seen as many, at least in my area. Um, they were out last week doing some spraying, but in general, I've noticed a pretty significant drop off of chemtrail activity, which is kind of interesting. Like, makes you wonder, have they moved on to something else? Is this operation coming to an end? Are they beginning a new operation? Have they changed their tactics? I remember noticing that it seemed like there was a lot more spraying going on at night, and you had to really pay attention, right? If you had like a really bright moon out, you could sometimes see the lines crossing the moon or whatever. But did they kind of take the little operation to a more nighttime operation in order for people to not be pointing it out so much? Because I mean, it was becoming a pretty big topic. Remember, I mean, chemtrails was pretty big on the whole, quote unquote conspiracy topic list. You don't see people really talking about the chemtrails
One of the
anymore.
big things that really woke me up, to be honest with you, because
Same here.
walking about, doing patrols and too much time on my hands, Scott, and I'm looking at the sky and doing security. You're out for 3 hours where you go in for a cup of tea, and I'm thinking, I watched that line getting made ages ago, and then there's a little plane there with no line, and then as the years went on and the internet got more and more information on it, wow, it's not just me that's been noticing this. And again, round about the same time, I'm listening to Alex Jones, and it all just blew up, dude. Blew up.
Yeah, definitely one of the crucial sort of topics that that helped wake me up to a lot of things as well, right? Usually, once you start to wake up to stuff, and you start coming across these core topics that become sort of the foundation build up on, and chemtrails is definitely one of those pillars of conspiracy topics that do that. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you haven't heard much about it lately. I think right now 5G is the new chemtrail. That seems to be has replaced the whole you know what I mean? Like, it shifted from chemtrails to 5G.
Big time. Just huge.
Reason for that.
Yep, you're correct there, dude. You are. And that, see, for me, the science isn't settled means it's not settled on either side. We don't know definitively the short or, more importantly, the long-term effects of this, Scott. And I've seen the stories out there, good and bad. And again, science not being settled doesn't mean that it's bad. It means that the science still needs to be done. It needs to be done independently. How we get that done independently, Scott, it's beyond me. But again, there's people living with 5G now. I'm more worried about the surveillance aspect of it, to be honest with you.
No, I'm with you too. I think just the entire surveillance grid that is going to be built on 5G poses more of a threat than just the actual 5G itself. You know what I mean?
All this electromagnetic soup is no good for us, Scott. I think all of it's quite damaging and harmful. Whether it's going to be the mass kill-off that everyone thinks is? I don't know. I'm just being honest, and so's Scott. And it won't be popular. We'll probably get told we're shilling for the telecommunications companies and the New World Order, Scott, but we're just being honest, you know?
Exactly. And even Stamets, you know, he was like, I'm not totally sold on the whole 5G frequency thing. You know, he said, I see other problems that are much more pressing of an issue to deal with this, you know, when it comes to stuff like this bee colony collapse and all of that stuff that, you know, there's a lot of other things going on causing this, and just chalking it up to 5G, I think, is extremely narrow-minded. You're boxing yourself into one thing, and then you start to lose sight of everything else going on. And like I said, I mean, we really don't have enough long-term data to really even tell us what the effects of 5G really are. Which, I mean, you can take that either way. You can, you know, if you're on the side of 5G being dangerous, and you can use that same argument. You know, hey, we don't have enough long-term analysis to really know if this is safe or not. And so that's where I am with it. I can't really sit there and make a claim either way. I can't sit there and tell you that 5G is completely safe. That would be absolutely foolish of me to say that. But I can't sit there and tell you that 5G is going to kill you, because it would be just as foolish, you know. So
I'm with you. I totally agree with you, Scott. All the way.
But I can't sit there with, but I can't sit here with 100% accuracy or 100% confidence and tell you that breathing in chemtrails is not good for you.
No.
You know, barium, aluminum, and strontium are not good things to ingest.
Nope.
And I think we have ample evidence to show that they have sprayed that. You know,
we had Clifford Carnicom on Freaky Friday, no less. A number of years ago, remember that?
Yeah. You know, it would be very good for people to go out and rewatch What in the World Are They Spraying, and the follow-up movie Why in the World Are They Spraying.
KVV'll double this if you spar the one up.
Spar the one up? What's spar the one up?
Yeah, but I'll W this if you spar the one up. Is that a...
If you spark one up? Well, I don't know if I can do that. That's not very algorithm and...
That's not very algorithm friendly, man.
Put me in very
saying,
tough
guys,
positions here.
When you see Kev's camera go black, he's hiding from the algo.
Oh, would I do anything like that? JP, I'm sitting in a city right now where there's 5G. Edinburgh's got 5G. There's a good few cities in the UK 5G right now.
Google new 5G Chinese internet satellite.
I mean, and let's be honest here. Oh.
I'm going to Google it, but what were you going to say? On you go.
And let's be honest here. Half of us are sitting here with a 5G router no more than like 3 feet from our skulls.
No, Scott, no. Let me tell you something about that, okay? That is not the same as the 5G frequencies that we're talking about. Now, hey, I'm the same as you. And I'll explain why, Scott. I'll explain why. It's when you go into your router settings, you've got a 2G and a 5G setting. It's actually a different thing altogether. It's a different...
Is it like a dual band 2.5 thing?
Yes.
Okay.
And it was young Brendan Drackler. He was actually explaining that to me, and I didn't want to believe him because nobody wants to know when they were wrong. And I'd put that out there hundreds of times. Remember, I'm sitting here with a 5G router sitting there, and I'm okay.
I mean, because on its face, that's what they advertise it as, right?
It's the
way it's implemented, which is different.
Yeah, it's because it's the frequencies that are different.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's not an actual like 5G frequency. It's just 2.5G kind of like dual band frequencies that then they can add it up and be like, oh, it's 5G.
Yeah, if you go into your router, folks, if you've got a 2G, 5G router, and most of the new ones are, you'll see what I'm saying. Because like I was saying there, I didn't want to believe I'd been wrong. As nobody does. Nobody likes it being wrong, right? And I went and looked into it. And the wee man was bang on. Brendan was spot on. He was right, because he was saying, Kev, give me some of your common fears. So I gave him that one. And he says, well, and then he explained it. And I'm like, that's awesome, dude. And I think he felt bad, because like, he was kind of saying, well, you were talking crap, but I don't take things that way. I learned something new there. And now I can go and tell people, well, don't you worry about that. Don't worry unnecessarily, because that's something else. Not to say that the whole thing's safe. I get that, but yeah.
Yeah. So, just shows that with a little bit of information, we can...
Well, here's the thing that DJ was talking about. China launches first satellite in bid to create global communications network and broaden net access for those that they deem good enough.
Yeah.
The Hongyun project represents an important part of China's national policy, Scott, to commercialize space technologies and broaden net access to rural areas. And it should have an asterisk, only after you've been face scanned and if you meet the correct credit score.
Yes, exactly. I was just about to say, as long as your social credit score reaches a certain threshold, will you get that lovely, lovely Chinese high speed?
Yep. Eddie, I don't own a cell phone.
Hey, Hetty, guess what? I don't either.
Yeah.
I've never had a cell phone.
It's your the way to look at it. And I wish I'd thought about this years ago when I first took one on. It's basically your own little private, artificially intelligent minder.
It is. It is. And hey, no, I'm not bashing anybody who owns a cell phone. I realize that it is, I realize that it is an absolute necessity, pretty much, right? It's just in my special circumstance, I really have no use for a cell phone. I'm disabled. I'm at home most of the time anyways.
I've got a show for you coming up real soon, and I'd love for you to be there, right? Because I'll get into this satellite in a little moment, but we had a caller into the show the other night, Scott, right? Andrew, his name was, and he is, get this, PhD in robotics, AI, programming, that kind of thing. And he's going to be coming onto the show to talk about the positive sides of this technology and what it's like being on the front lines and being really excited about the work that he's doing. Because look, we've said that before, right? These guys that are in there doing this must be the coolest work, creating robots and doing all this stuff. And I think Andrew was really thinking that because of the way we talk, Scott, it sounds like we're Luddites. It sounds like we're like anti-technology. But that couldn't be further from the truth. It's just, we often talk about the negative side, and we've tried to be more positive lately, haven't we? We have tried to look at the positives instead of the always. Everyone talks about the negative, man.
Yeah, and that was one of the more interesting things I gleaned whenever I did the Rundown Live with Kriston Harris, and we were talking to Ben Zion, the presidential candidate for the Transhumanist Party.
That's right.
I still need to get in touch with him too, see if we can get him on, because I think that'd be a very interesting conversation.
Please.
Yes.
If you dangle the Geordie Rose carrot, just say, Geordie Rose, Geordie, he's been on the Kev Baker show.
Don't worry, Kev. I talked up KBS.
Pimp Geordie out. He's all right with it. I'll square it with him.
Yes. I said, Kev had Geordie Rose on on KBS and raised a few eyebrows, and so but no, that was very interesting though. The conversation we have, and I know that there are a lot of negative connotations to the whole transhumanist thing, right? You soon as you bring up the word transhumanist, people immediately they're like, ooga booga, merging with the machine, the beast system, But in actuality, I mean, if you just really look at most kind of transhumanists, it's just people thinking about how to utilize technology in the best way possible to better humanity, right? And that's what I got from our conversation. When we talked with Ben Zion, he's like, "Look, I want to talk about problems that we can solve. I want to talk about the way we can utilize technology in a way that betters humanity." And guess what? A lot of these people within the transhumanist movement, right, or this transhumanist party, they have a lot of the same concerns that we have. That's I think a very important thing to note here, is that it's almost like they're looking at it from the perspective of Musk looking at AI, right? You know how Musk was like, okay, this technology is on the horizon, it's coming, there's no way we're going to stop it, so we need to sit back and kind of think about how we're going to utilize this in the most responsible way possible, and how humanity can possibly keep up with it, right? And so I know a lot of people are torn on the whole neural lace thing, right? But he sees it as kind of a necessary step we have to take in order to keep pace with the technology. Transhumanists, at least Ben Zion, from what I've gathered, he thinks the same way. He has a lot of the same questions that we have about this technology, about AI and all this stuff. What could go wrong, and you really have to think about those things of what could go wrong, but you also have to look at what could go right. What could you do? What could we do positively? In a positive aspect with this technology, and move forward with it, that helps us. And so I think it's very important to have that conversation, and so hopefully I can get him on sometime. We'll see what we can do.
I would love for that, Scott. I really look forward to that show. I really do. That'd be so cool. But if we go back to this article, then this Chinese satellite says China has successfully launched its first satellite aimed at building a global communications network that could bring the internet to about 600 million Chinese still without access. This isn't about the Chinese government being absolutely fantastic and wanting to give internet.
I know. They're making it sound like,
Scott, if you look at like the globe, right, as a giant, like, just a prison camp. What China are doing now is they've realized like that their walls, their firewall, it doesn't quite capture every inch of land. So there's still people that are able to sneak in and out of their matrix. We can't be having that. Well, what do? Get a satellite up there. End of. Put it in a geostatic orbit, and away we go, man. Geolocked, dude. Cool to go.
Hey, that's 600 million people that they don't have dossiers on. That's 600 million people that don't have a social credit score. That's 600 million people that are still off the grid, right?
And of course, right now, we're after December the 1st. So even if you are phoning up your broadband company, you've just moved house or you've just decided to get broadband, before they will even come to your house, you'll need to show them your facial ID from the government. Yeah, you have to go and get registered at a government kind of fusion center with their facial ID scan, or you ain't even getting the equipment in your home, Scott.
Exactly. I mean, you can see how they roll this stuff out, dude. Yeah, I bet all of these people who are in these, rural areas that don't have any Chinese internet access. I mean, if I was my recommendation would be to just kind of not get the internet. Just go ahead and pass up on that. I know it's an amazing technology and all, but when it comes to China, communist China, that probably would be the best course of action if you wanted to somewhat stay off the grid, stay off their radar. Because as soon as you head up to that little facility or whatever, the cable company building or whatever, and they're like, okay, I need your photo ID. It's over. I mean,
You know what happens here, Scott? You know what happens?
You're
There's
already being tracked enough as it is with a paper trail and a physical dossier, right, in a communist country. But as soon as they scan that ID into a database, as soon as they scan it in where facial recognition and the algorithms can start picking it up, it's over.
Well,
That's
think
it.
about it. What's happened is, right, you've got Ling Ping, little farmer out there in one of these outlying areas, and part of his tractor, it went tits up, so he's had to go into one of these bigger kind of cities, Beijing, somewhere like that. So he's drove out of the rural, no internet, no Wi-Fi area, and at some point, invisible to him, he crossed a line. He crossed a barrier. He went through a firewall into the Matrix. And what happened is the first facial recognition and license plate recognition camera on that highway that he was on, it started to do something really, really weird, because it found A, the tractor wasn't registered, and B, it was a face that wasn't on its giant database. There was alarms going off everywhere, Scott. It was going absolutely mental. Wee. Unknown citizen. Wasn't it? That's what was happening, dude. I'm telling you, man.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, exactly. If you're not in the system or whatever, and it scans a face that it doesn't recognize, I'm sure it starts flagging it up and going, like you said, ring.
Does it sound
Unknown
have I got the effect on? Is this the effect? Have I got the right effect on? Unknown citizen, stand still. You will be.
I don't think that was the right effect, but it did sound funny.
You see, there's all different ones. I see if I play about with that one, I start going silly again. Yeah. Too many effects, Scott. That's what it is. Too many buttons at my control.
You've increased your pitch, Kev.
Yes, it's away now.
Oh, I was about to say. I was like,
you want a good laugh, though? I'll give everyone a laugh. You know me, the easiest guy to trigger in the world when it comes to the Gender Olympics, right? There's a knob on this actual thing, and I'll bring it over so Scott can see it right there. It's a knob and a dial that plays about with the gender of your voice. I am not making it up.
Oh no. Wow. Well,
it caters for everyone. It's inclusive.
Hey, it might come in handy sometime. It might come in handy.
It's inclusive, dude. What can I say? So yeah, I think basically, you add this Chinese satellite to Elon Musk's satellites and all the other companies that are talking about putting satellites up as well. We've had Google talking about balloons, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, Scott. And I get it, because when it gets into... We haven't seen anything yet. Because this throughput that comes with 5G, it's awesome. And sure, we're streaming movies right now, Scotty boy. It's great, right? You're watching movies before they even come out the cinema. It streams that fast, right? However, this has been pimped out for what's to come. And I ain't talking about your smart fridges and all the rest of it. They're already here. Billions of those. It's for the robots, the drones, the vehicles, everything that's going autonomous, Scott. They need blanket coverage. They can't have 1 inch where there's going to be any lag time, any dead area. It's got to go.
Yeah, it's they've got to establish this ultra high bandwidth grid that covers every inch, right? That covers every single area, right? Because if you have a car, a autonomous driving vehicle, that's driving on a highway out in the middle of the desert in California or Arizona or something, you still have to have that coverage. You still have to have that ability to tap into that high-speed network, even if you're driving through a remote desert area or something like that. So that's what they have to establish. And it, like you said, it's for the autonomous vehicles, it's for the robots. It's also going to be for all of the immersion, the AR, the holograms, the virtual reality. You have to have high bandwidth to pump that kind of information through, right? It's not like you're watching just your a video feed on your monitor, right? When you start talking about augmented reality and VR and all of that stuff, that is a lot more bandwidth because, I mean, think about it, right? So VR, it's two separate screens. You have information coming in one eye, information coming into the other eye, and it's all got to be synced up. And so you're essentially having to just double the bandwidth with VR. That's why you have to have a super, super powerful gaming computer to run VR, because if you have a mid-range video card that could handle a game normally, but it would not be able to handle VR because then you're having to...
Sorry. No, sorry, Scott. I apologize. I'll need to set the gate a bit louder so my laugh doesn't trigger it, right? Because that is worrisome. You better run. I think that's who phoned up the show the other night, but what a comment. Love it. If you're going to buy one of those brown chicken, brown cow, hey, happy fun time, $5 me love you long time type of robots, then do you think you're going to need a pair of vice grips for that thing when the Wi-Fi goes down? Dang, dude. Dang, dude.
Yeah, kind of shuts off about halfway through, and
that would kill the moment.
In a bit of a pickle there, aren't you?
Bang. Well, you're like co-joined to this thing that's stuck in a cross-eyed, gimpy kind of look like Joe's face that he pulls. It's not a good look.
Then you go to call 911, right? And because all of the phone calls are over voice over IP, when the 5G goes down, you can't get a hold of emergency. Do
you think? Oh, imagine the embarrassment if said doll comes with almost built-in tech support for when something like that happens. It automatically places a call to a technician. Some guy comes to the door. Yeah, don't worry about it, mate. I've seen it all before. I've seen it all before. Plenty Vaseline. We'll have you out of there in a minute.
Yeah, he's like, this is the third one this week. It's okay.
It's the third one in this street. What are you up to?
Yeah, but I mean, look. So, I mean, okay, well, here's the deal. Let me just go kind of full woo.
Please do, Scott. You know how we encourage that behavior here.
Yeah, yes. So you know how we've always talked about the New World Order in terms of like them establishing the European Union, then the North American Union, and then like you had the Asian Union.
Don't hear much about that whole NAFTA anymore, do you? The whole North American one.
Yeah, because Trump is renegotiating all of that. And I think they actually signed this new trade agreement with Canada and Mexico. But I'm sitting here thinking, what if that whole sort of thing of thinking of the New World Order in terms of, like the road to the New World Order, we've always kind of thought about it in these blocks of countries, right? Oh, we have all the Asian countries, blocking up together to be the Asian Union. You have all these European countries blocking together to make the European Union, and so forth with like the North American Union and all that. What if we're actually looking at a corporate governance situation, like a corporate where instead of people thinking about it in terms of borders, you have to think about it in terms of like corporate global controllers, right? So you have China sending up their satellite. for all of their internet access, and whatever kind of shell company that is going to answer to the Chinese government, right? So because we know the Chinese have their model set up to where it's this weird hybrid of communist and capitalistic sort of operation, right? They play the capitalist game as far as companies are concerned, and making money via that route, but it's all funneled back into the communist hierarchy, communist system, right? And so obviously these Chinese telecom companies, or these ISPs, they are somewhat independent entities, but they all have to answer to the Chinese government, when it all is said and done. But what I'm getting at here is, instead of these unions that we see, that we've looked at in terms of blocks of countries, what if we're seeing these unions being built out of corporations, right? So you have your Facebooks and your Googles saying, we'll handle all of the North American kind of stuff, or the more of the Western population. And then you have the Chinese putting up their internet and going, okay, well, we'll have our population, because if you think about how much people are controlled by technology, how much they're dependent on it, right? That access is like super, super important. And it's very important for them to be able to get as many people as possible hooked in, right? I mean, you see how much money China's investing just so they can get 600 million people. They want those people in that control grid, So I think you have to start looking at it from that angle of these technology companies and stuff being really, really major players as far as creating these kind of, I guess you could call it digital gulags.
They're not technology companies. They're government extensions. That's where the money came from. That's where the money came from to set it all up, So I think we need to stop thinking about them as being companies. They're just government with a different logo.
Corporatism.
That's what it is. I mean,
something
Scott, you're the one that brought the story to the table for us about LifeLog closing down one day. Facebook miraculously, mysteriously just springing up on the exact same day, out of nowhere.
And Pentagon DARPA program to get people to log their life online.
And for people out there who are wondering or still waiting for the Trumpomaniac to really wind in big tech and all the rest of it, that's the reason he hasn't, folks. That's the reason he hasn't. It's part of their apparatus, dude.
It's definitely part of the apparatus.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it just shows how much control actually has been given. That's what I should say. How much control has been given to these corporations?
Yes, indeed. Yep. They've taken on a life of their own, like a moth mama.
Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. One last story before we go today, Scott. Fancy it?
Yes.
A nice quickie, and it links perfectly to everything we've been talking about recently, and people are going to go, what? How does this link to anything? Oh, but it does. It so does, people. You see how it links already, Scott, right? But Mysterious Universe, the mysterious elves of Iceland, and the world's only elf school. You see, only on Freaky Friday, folks, only. And the reason this is relevant, and the reason I even bring this up today, is because of all the stuff we've been getting into lately with our caller and our good friend Max, Black Templar from the chat room. That's led us down a rabbit hole, or a goblin hole, as we found last week, Scott, that led to these stories about little people and then we got into the whole Nordic lore and Nordic texts and I've not had a chance to really speak to you since this happened, but the connections that Max was making between all of this legend and lore, and including these magical little people and everything else, it had encoded in it, Scott, highly advanced mathematics, and dare I say it, predicting a future nuclear event. There you go.
See, and there you go. And it brings us back full circle to where I have to reiterate again. There's something to the numerology, and there's something to the like sacred geometry and stuff like that, because you just totally cannot discount it, because you start seeing these patterns like Max picked up when he was looking into all of the Nordic texts, the Nordic myths and legends, and he was able to make that incredible sort of connection to possibly what appears to be a connection to nuclear technology, right? You know, the representation of an atom and all of that. And I think his take on that was pretty interesting, to say the least. So yeah, and Iceland, man, people, that's a place I want to go. I want to go to Iceland. It just seems like a very, very cool place to visit. And they have a lot of freedom there. When it comes to like internet and all of that stuff, I think they have their record is probably one of the most free countries when it comes to internet. So yeah, very, very awesome. It's going to be very interesting to see what Kev has to get into here with these elves and stuff. I know that they really, really are very superstitious there in Iceland when it comes to elves and creatures like that. So be very, very interesting. Ah, there he is. And no, I was just telling the people I would like to go to Iceland, Kev.
Yes, Scott. Sorry, I'd muted myself up there.
Yes. I was telling everyone that Iceland is actually kind of like recognized as the most free country when it comes to the internet.
Yep. And think about it as well, because Iceland, remember, folks, they said to us, or at least here in the UK, they put Iceland on a terror watch list. They were threatening to put anyone flying in from Iceland onto this terror watch list, so they cancelled flights when Iceland basically gave the middle finger to the EU, and everyone said, oh, it can never work, they'll be bankrupt and everything else. And you know what, we never heard much about Iceland after that, and there's a reason for that, because Iceland now is one of the most successful economies when you look at Europe and the EU countries that allegedly, you know, you're better off joining the EU. And again, it's a lot different when you go to somewhere like, Iceland as well. Because, Scott, I think it's 600,000 people live there. You've got no standing army in between you and the government as well. So it was a lot easier for them to change things around. And bankers went to jail there. People that should have gone to jail went to jail. And you're right, dude. They've got things right there.
Yeah, I think that's also a good example of like how much power the people can exert when your population is a lot smaller. You know, I think as you have a population that expands and it covers such a large area that it's much more difficult to change the system. You know what I mean? Because the bureaucracy and the government is just like this faceless entity out in another part of the country somewhere that you never ever get to interact with, and um, it's almost like they know you exist, but they really don't care. You know what I mean? And you're never gonna really. But when you're talking about a country that has like 600,000 people, I mean, hell, it's like the population of Wichita, Kansas. You know, I mean, maybe Wichita's got maybe 100 or 200 more thousand people or something like that. But you know, that's not even a million people live in Iceland, and so you're dealing with like people that you may actually have a possibility of like getting a hold of these people face to face, you know. And not only that, it seems that most of their population are confined to probably the largest city there, I would assume, right? It's not like they're scattered all over Iceland. I mean, that place is covered in volcanoes and and stuff like that. So it's not, there's only certain pockets where the population actually exists in Iceland. And so for any kind of like people power movement to take hold over there, I think would be very, very effective, just because of how low the population is and how close everyone is to each other. It's a much more tight-knit society there.
Yep. And I tell you what, when the apocalypse does happen and it all goes down, you know, head to Iceland, because underground we might just find some of the largest deposits of Bitcoin anywhere. The amount of mining of Bitcoin that goes on in Iceland, folks.
I was just about to say, as a crypto nerd myself, seeing some of those mining operations, those Bitcoin mining operations in Iceland is absolutely staggering. And they're able to pretty much do it for free because they're using geothermal electricity. So I mean, it's just the initial investment of building the facility and buying all of the mining, you know, Bitcoin mining rigs. But once you do that, it's off to the races then. So, yeah, awesome stuff.
Oh, it really is. So then let's get into this little story here where we wrap up. And when I seen the headline, I had to bring it along today because of everything we've been talking about lately with Max, and I thought it'd be a nice light way to see us out today. So Iceland has long been a place permeated with magic, myth, and a certain sense of otherworldly splendour and the unknown. Here, looking out over the sprawling vistas of lava, fields and fjords, it sometimes seems only natural that there should be some sort of magical creature to inhabit it all. And this place does not disappoint. The lore of elves called Alfar, a type of huldufolk in Icelandic meaning hidden folk. Now, including fairies, dwarfs, mountain spirits, trolls and gnomes, goes deep and stretches back into the mists of time. The mythology on elves in Iceland has its roots in the 10th century, at a time when the Norwegian Vikings were first settling these rocky, remote shores, and it was long believed that humans and the elves most peacefully coexisted for many centuries, although there are myths of epic battles between humans and elves as well, and it seems to have been a tumultuous relationship. Iceland is a country absolutely steeped in legends of elves and other supernatural beings, yet for many in this cold northern nation, it is more than just myth and stories. And the strong connection of elf lore and belief that elves are real remains thrumming under Icelandic culture right up until the modern day. So, Scott, they're talking about a time when we all lived together in peace and harmony and kumbaya and playing the pipes and all the rest of it.
See, this is one of those things where I think Tolkien pulled from some of this stuff, like pulled from some of this Icelandic lore, a lot of this Nordic lore and all of that, because this literally sounds like Lord of the Rings type stuff, right? I bet This is literally something out of the Lord of the Rings, out of Tolkien's novel. You know, humans and elves living in like this peaceful coexistence most of the time, but occasionally having squabbles and battles between elves and humans. It doesn't get any more.
Cool
I
than
mean,
that.
it doesn't get any more fantasy nerd than that.
Exactly. And
You know what I
remember
mean?
those
So-
remember the Erd styles as well? Remember the little entrance to those little tunnels that looked like something out of Lord of the Rings?
And you know, elves are supposedly of a smaller stature. They're not like dwarfs, but they're kind of like in between. Their height is kind of like in between a dwarf and a human. You know, there's that middle ground between the two, and so, yeah, they're just a smaller statured humanoid of some kind.
Yep. So in Iceland, it is not particularly uncommon for people to come forward with sightings of real elves. And in one study, it was estimated that around 62% of all Icelanders believe in their existence, while a substantial portion of others has an open mind to the possibility. That's amazing, and that shows you how a different people, a different culture, very much more open-minded to the supernatural, Scott.
Exactly. And you know, and I think that's the kind of open mind that everybody should have, right? You know,
And even the
E-
ones that don't
you know,
believe in it, they're still
yeah,
open to it.
yeah, as I say, you know, even though you know that percentage doesn't necessarily believe it, they're like, well, hey, I'm still open up to the possibility. They're not like completely shutting it out. So, and you know what, I think with a percentage of 62% of the population that actually believe they've seen something, or that you know that they believe the lore is true, then yeah, I think you would have to keep an open mind on something like that.
Yeah. It goes on to say the belief in what are called elf stones is also deeply embedded in the culture and are an extension of this belief. Elf stones are essentially rocks that are said to serve as homes for these supernatural creatures. And it's not uncommon to see them dotting parks or in the yards of homes, where it is seen as taboo to move them or disturb them in any way. Wow, that's something new as well, right?
Hey, you don't want to move the elf's house. You know,
Didn't consent to that. I mean,
no.
so some of
no.
them are made into elf altars and
Whoa.
candles placed around them and offerings made to the creatures. And so ingrained in the Icelandic culture is the belief in elf stones that whole construction projects are planned around them, and even highways will take detours around particularly well-known stones, and elf activity governs the movement of fishing vessels at all times. I had no idea, dude. No idea.
Do you think it would blow someone's mind if like you set up one of these like elf altars and then you came back and there was like a pack of like Keebler elf cookies sitting there?
Now, in Scotland, when we see a stone arrangement like this, we call them cairns. Cairns. That's what we do. Stack the stones
So-
on one another.
Yeah, the stone stacking thing.
Yeah.
Very common sort of practice you see all over the place.
And
Another one of these things.
That comes from another time, big man.
Yes.
And it
Yes.
makes you wonder as well. This sounds so weird, but back in this time when there was technology that was different, you wonder if maybe a pile of stones in the right spot in the ground was almost tapping into something. You just don't know. Who knows, Scott? Who honestly knows at this point, man?
Yeah, they're dealing with some knowledge that we have long forgotten or
Deep
have
woo.
yet to rediscover.
Deep woo. To build through an area with an elf stone is to invite protests from locals, and projects often face delays due to a pesky stone in the way of progress. Indeed, there has been cases in which the stones were moved to cause an uproar and force an apology to the elves from the actual government.
Wow! So they got the government's got to come out, apologize to the elves. Sorry, we had to move your house. That's let's hope this doesn't start another elven human war. You know, they got to do diplomatic relations, Kev. Come on, diplomatic
Dude.
relations.
Do you think we could
They've
get
got
the
it.
ambassador of the elves on here? The
Ooh.
elven one.
The elven ambassador.
I'm almost the right height. I could almost apply for the job myself, dude. He might feel at home with me. There's me assuming gender again. It could be a she, it could be a they. Who knows, right? So, moving stones is said to bring all manner of misfortune and even death. And even people who don't believe in elves will usually leave them alone. Now, just in case, in short, Iceland takes its elves very seriously, but perhaps taking it all even more seriously than most is a man named Magnus Shackfession. Fenison, who knows?
Wait, hold on. Let me give it a shot. Scarfiosensen.
Scarfio, I'll call him Scarface, right? A historian by trade, Scarface, brilliant name, he has researched elves for over 30 years. So anybody who laughs at me, because I've noticed, Scott, this is one way that the trolls try to get to me. Oh, that Kev Baker, he talks about elves and goblins and gnomes. Yeah, I do. If you think that's going to hurt me, like, personally, and put me off doing these stories, it really, really won't. It just doesn't roll like that at all, Scotty. So, think, though, if you think I'm into the elves, what about Scarface? He's been doing it over 30 years. And he's interviewed more than 900 Icelanders who claim to have had encounters with the creature during that time, even becoming friends with them or entering their homes. And he is widely considered.
Is that almost 1% of the Icelandic population he's interviewed?
If it's not one, it'd be 0.1 or 0.1. Yeah, it's definitely on the one scale though. With it being at 600,000, you're in the right ballpark, dude. Right idea. Is it like the 0.01% in Iceland?
Ooh.
Yeah, and the rest of the world, they're the ones that run it. But in Iceland, they're the ones that got to see the elves. Who knew? So, he is widely considered to be one of the foremost experts on Icelandic elves and their lore. I'd hope so. After 30 years studying it, you'd hope he'd picked up a thing or two. He is also happens to run the world's first fully fledged elf school, or Alpha Skólinn, which is an offshoot of the Paranormal Foundation in Iceland. Ah, Scott, we've got like bajillions of reasons to get to Iceland now, dude.
Yeah, see, come on. I mean, look, the Paranormal Foundation of Iceland sounds like a perfect place to
It sounds like the kind of place that we could actually appeal to for asylum, for political asylum from the rest of the upside down world.
What I'm saying, if we had to bug out and scramble to Iceland, I would immediately be contacting the paranormal group down there.
I'm with you, dude. I'm with you. So it goes on to say here at the school, opened in 1991 in Reykjavik, Iceland, Scarface gives lectures on the hidden folk and opens or holds open forums for people who have had these experiences. Now, all done in a very casual atmosphere where they drink coffee and eat cake, pancakes and waffles in a cosy rustic room among various bookshelves filled to the brim with leather-bound books and numerous trinkets, amulets, and of course, elf figurines and other elf-themed items. Now, this might seem just a little elf chat club, but the school actually means business with a full curriculum, a diploma, and certificate programs. And there have been around 9,000 people who have come through these doors to earn certificates and diplomas on elf studies. And the school publishes books on the subject as well, although it started small with Scarface explaining. But before Scarface explains anything, this is why it's really important, folks, to really scrutinise anyone that tells you that, yeah, they've been to university, They've got a diploma, you know. Oh, really? What have you got a diploma in? Elven studies. Oh, okie dokie. Not to rubbish it, but it can almost take that air of authority out of the equation when somebody tries to use this.
How dare you, Kev? I have a PhD at the end of my name. I'm a professor of elf studies.
I specialize in the classical Viking Gothic gecko era of them, Scott. How about you? Yes, indeed. So, Scarface, oh, look at him, man. He looks like the kind of dude I'd like to go for a pint with.
Yeah, he definitely.
He's got that friendly Scandinavian type face. Does Iceland qualify as Scandinavia?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I consider it because me personally, I mean, I don't know what the official designation.
I would because of the Viking connection, right?
Yeah. I think any place that was like heavily populated by Viking populations, I just consider Scandinavian. So, but I could be wrong. If anybody in the chat wants to correct us on that, please let us know. Is Iceland really considered a Scandinavian?
You know, Sidvich, like our Norwegian listener, he's either thumbing this up right now or he's throwing things at whatever he's listening on. Because our Sid, I've spoke to Sid, I've seen Sid on camera and that, we've had a good chat. He is a cool character. I get the air, I get the sense that he's very, very staunchly proud of his roots. And so he should be. So we all should be. So he's either really laughing or he's really mad right now. Sorry, or we've got you, brother. Either way.
That's why we said, hey, if you want to correct us, please do.
Yep.
But for now, I consider Iceland part of that whole Scandinavian thing.
Exactly. And I think we need to drain the North Sea. Because you look at the Scottish people and you look at the Vikings and that. And I tell you what.
Yeah, I think there's a really good argument to be made that the Scottish can.
Anyone living at that latitude or north of that latitude, like anywhere north of the line of latitude that comes across the UK, round about, I would say Birmingham, south of Birmingham, not so much. North of Birmingham, Yorkshire, Scotland, the Scandinavian places, tougher parts of Russia, Germany. You see what I'm saying here?
Any of our Scandinavian friends in the chat, would you be happy to adopt the Scottish? I think that a case can be made that you guys have a lot in common in that.
Did anyone watch that TV show Vikings that started back again? I bring it up because King phoned into the show just this week, Scott. Brilliant stuff. But he was saying Floki discovered Iceland. Now, this is why I like the TV show Vikings. Because, yeah, it's a dramatization. There's been a lot of money spent on it. It's on the History Channel. But it sews in these little factual, historical nuggets, Scott. Like Floki discovering it. And he just set out. He just went away. He wanted to get away, you know. Obviously, they had the story to it. But imagine living in a time where, literally, you know, you were sailing out into the unknown, Scott. For you personally, and I get there's people on the lands like the Native Americans, but
yeah,
imagine that. Imagine, I thought about that. You know, that's a hell of an undertaking. You know, I mean, dang, dude, you don't know what awaits you out there. Imagine the stories of what lies over the horizon. Ooh, booga booga. You know.
Is it the edge, Kev?
I wasn't going to say that, Scott. I didn't want to go there. I was getting close. I had to wind myself back, dude. I did.
I went ahead and handled that.
You know what I mean?
But no, yeah, you're right though. I mean, if you didn't, because me personally, I believe that the Vikings had a lot more greater knowledge of bodies of water and like where they were going than what history has taught us, right? So, you know, when you say, okay, you know, Loki discovered Iceland and that, you know, he just like had to get away and just take off, and it's like he didn't know where he was going. But really, really, is that the case, or did he know where he was going?
Did he?
I mean, did he know that? Okay, there's probably a body of land somewhere out here that somebody has ran into before. That he's heard legends or heard rumors that somebody
Scott,
has.
How about he's seen an old map? An old map. Even back at these times, there would have been maps from like way before then. And whoa, hang on. Well, there's a bit of land on this map that we've never got to before. Hang on.
Yeah. See, and so then that piques the whole human curiosity, right? We like to push the boundaries. Humans always take risks. I think that's why we've achieved so much, for better or worse. We're just a species that likes to take risks. And if there's an area where that possibly hasn't been discovered, or that there's a rumor that there's a land that lies beyond, somebody's going to take that risk and try to get there.
Because that's what we do. That's how we roll.
What we do. That's how we roll.
So Scarface says, people come to me with their stories and they swear to me that they're not drunk, they're not on drugs, and they're not a pathological liar. I never planned to create the elf school. As more and more people inquired about my work, I just started telling everyone to come by on Fridays. And that's how it all began. Now, according to Scarface, there are 13 different species of elves inhabiting the cold and often forbidding wilds in Iceland, ranging from just several...
13?
13 on Friday the 13th. Boom. And another synchronicity. I'm not sure if Sam is in the chat room right now. Sam Rodriguez. But she was telling me, this is so weird because we got a phone call from Regla Girl the other night. And Regla randomly brought up the Nielsen ratings system. That thing about that they used to have on the TV, Scott, to rate TV shows. And I'd never heard of this before. And I think it was kind of new on Sam, or she hadn't heard about it in years anyway. And then one thing led to another. And the very next day, or the very same day she listened to that show, what was on the TV? A program about the Nielsen ratings. It's weird, dude. But that's good that the listeners are starting to play our game. And I say it's a game, but it's not, because it's synchronism. And when you start to find it, okay, these
taking
ones
note
are
of the synchronicities.
Yeah, because again, there's innocent ones, there's light-hearted ones, there's fun ones, but then there's that real vein of woo. It takes you somewhere. It's going somewhere, Scott. You know what I mean? Like the goblins. So we've got 13 different species, right? And it says ranging from just several inches in height up to a few feet. That's where I fall into the bracket. Some of them benign and friendly, while others are shy, reclusive, or even malicious. This might raise a few eyebrows, but Scarface takes it all very seriously, and indeed does not think of himself as a folklorist, but rather a neutral scientist trying to get to the bottom of these mysteries. And he treats the subject with a reverence, intelligence, and enthusiasm that by all accounts is absolutely infectious. For him, this is a very important area of study and is worthy of looking at in a neutral, open-minded manner. Now, Scott, that's a very good way to approach anything, to approach it neutrally, be open-minded. I think that's really good, a good building block to step off from.
He's just taken all of the data he's come across, right? All of the lore, all of the legends, everything he's researched in writing, that has been written about them. And he's aggregated it all into one source, and he's just trying to study it. So yeah, kudos to him, man. I mean, it sounds like a very, very fascinating topic to study. And obviously, he's been at it for 30 years. So I guess we could call him the world expert on Icelandic elves.
Dang right. So then, he says, we don't have a clue why these creatures are pulled back and forth between dimensions, The only thing you can do is collect all the people's experiences. The only source of information is to find all possible witnesses and ask them in detail. What did they look like? What were they wearing? What is their opinion on God and eternity? Why are they here? There are many things we still don't know about these elves and hidden people. What we don't know, we have learned, or what we do know, we have learned from people who have decades of friendships with them and have been invited into their homes. He also believes that Iceland is in a unique position to house elves because the non-traditional culture and background of the country has made the creatures feel safe to reveal themselves to humans. He says that these beings live in other countries as well, but are more reclusive there, and in his opinion, in many ways, Iceland's location, vast swathes of uninhabited or sparsely populated vistas, and the open-mindedness of the people to these beings have come together to create the perfect environment and habitat for the hidden people, explaining why they are more often seen and encountered here than any other areas. However, he also warns that even in Iceland, changing attitudes and increasingly turning away from belief in magic is slowly causing the creatures to disappear and go into hiding. And he says in other countries, with Western scientific arrogance and the denial of everything that they have not discovered themselves, they say that
That's right. That's a very, very apt way of describing most mainstream science, right? Arrogance and denial of everything that they have not discovered themselves. Very true.
Big time. And they say that witnesses are subject to hallucinations. We, in Iceland, would be living in a totally different society if the Enlightenment had not started in the 1700s. But the Enlightenment had a terrible price. It killed faith. Faith is the one thing that keeps civilization together. Not only did it kill faith, it killed myth and psychic ability. Many people believe in elves in Iceland because we were isolated. The Enlightenment didn't come to Iceland until 1941, when the American army invaded Iceland. Then we had the Enlightenment, and it began cleaning the elves away. So that's a bit weird that, the more still connected to the old world, the old ways, and almost isolated from technology, the good and the bad that comes from it, Scott. In some way, that kept them almost out of time. It was almost as if it was preserved from the way it always was.
Yeah, very interesting, actually. And I didn't realize it had been until that recent that like Iceland basically became modernized, right? 1940s. That's pretty interesting. I did not know that. But it goes back to what we've been talking about, what I've said before many times, right? That these ancient cultures had a much deeper connection to nature and everything going on around them, right? There was just something different. And I think he's describing that. He's describing that the Icelandic people were still engaged in these ancient practices, the ancient sort of arts of being able to be.
They were still in harmony. That's what it is, right? They're in harmony.
They were still in harmony with everything, and so these elves or these interdimensional creatures or beings of some sort can sense that in them. They can see that, oh, okay, they still have that knowledge. They still have that old way. And so they feel more comfortable to approach them and to make themselves known to them, as opposed to, say, an elf showing up to some soy boy on college campus. You know what I mean? Their thought process is totally out of whack, and they can see that. These elven beings can see that, you know what, probably not a good idea to mess with these people because they've gone way out of left field, and it's better for us to just leave them alone. But with the Icelandic people, they're like, oh, okay, these people are pretty cool. We can We can interact with them. They're not gonna shoot me and drag my body to a facility, government facility, DARPA facility
I,
somewhere, because that's what would happen here.
I remember landing on Iceland, dude. That's where one of our stop-offs was on the way to MacDill Air Force Base. And we had 2 hours in an air base just outside Reykjavik, I think it was. And it's very funny because you've got a bunch of British soldiers on their way to Florida. So we had on like tropical gear. You can imagine what we had on. Nobody told us we were stopping in Iceland in the freezing cold for 2 hours. Now that was hilarious. Everyone can remember the film Cool Runnings. That's what it was like when we came off the back of that Hercules, Scott. We were like dressed up for like the Bahamas and we walked into like the Arctic. It was awful, dude, awful. But yeah, we landed there and then we went to, and this kills me even more, but we went to Halifax, Nova Scotia in Canada. Now at the time, Nova Scotia, pure novelty for Kev, New Scotland, no less, right? All these Scottish flags and everything. It was like a home away from home. And it was only years later I discovered, Scott. And we stayed there one night on the way there, one night on the way back. But if you watch Oak Island, they often go to the University of Halifax to get things tested. It's a stone's throw from Oak Island, dude.
You were right there.
I was in sniffing distance, man. Sniffing distance of it. And I had never even heard of the place. Never heard of it. I'd never heard of it at all. And Don Wiskin, who I get onto the show as well, a Canadian guy, he had never heard of Oak Island till I told him.
Oh.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, very strange, eh?
It just shows that even when something has gained a lot of interest, right? Like Oak Island, with the TV show and everything. There's always people out there who still they're new to the information.
And this season of Oak Island is off the chart. Off the chart. Not saying anything else. I'm not going to spoil it. Once the season's done, we will break it all down. So he explains to his students that in a way, it is the modern world and its rigid ways of thinking that have destroyed real magic and the elves along with it. Not simply because the belief and the myths have disappeared, but because our modern lives and move away from these ideas have in a sense blinded us to these mysteries revolving around us. One writer, Anna Sui, who actually went and earned the diploma from the elf school, puts it rather well when she says in an article for Best Health, quote, "The truth is, most people are so conditioned and regimented in their lives that they lose any connection to the greater forces at work. Once we disconnect from magic, we disconnect from grace and the divine. As a result, similar to a flower cut from its roots, our spiritual life force weakens as we lose our connection to nature and the flow of life. We become anxiety-ridden and blind to the complex ecosystem that surrounds and supports us." Oh,
makes a lot of sense.
Amen to that. Oh yeah, big time. Give me some more of her. What was her name? Anna Sui? Oh, I think I'll be taking a little note of that one. That's somebody to reach out to, I think, Scott.
I think so. You'll have a bona fide elf university
only
graduate.
On KBS, only on the Kev Baker show. They all want to be like us, Scott. All of them. Honestly, they do.
Yeah, it goes back to what we were just talking about, right? That most people have lost, at least modern society has lost its connection to everything. We've become disjointed, and I think we have to find an equal balance to where, we can utilize this technology and stuff that we're building, but we also have to find a way to be in tune with our surroundings and with nature, get back to our roots.
Yep.
And hey, it also goes back to what we were saying, or what we talked about before, right? Where I think this ties into like how kids have the ability to see spirits and paranormal activity. And then as you grow up, it's almost like you put the blinders on. You're no longer like opened up to it because you either convince yourself that it's not real, or you're told repeatedly that it's all just fairy tale and myth, and you eventually just shut it down, and then you're not opened up anymore to it. And I think that's also kind of what this guy's just, what they're describing with the Icelandic people, that they were once opened up to it, but now with kind of this modern way of thinking, he attributes it to the Enlightenment or whatever, this more scientific way of thinking. Then people in Iceland are probably taught now that, well, the elves are just myths, they're just legends, they're not real, these are just stories that were told. And when you kind of indoctrinate the people through that, you're putting the blinders on them. They're going to grow up without that ability to connect to these things, because I mean, we are, he even said right there, he said that they're interdimensional. When you shut off that connection, to see into that other kind of frequency, that other realm, then of course you're not going to see them. They're not going to show up. If you're not in tune with that frequency, you're never going to see them.
No, you're absolutely right. So what we'll do is, Scott, we'll do the last paragraph here. And then look at that. It's taken up nicely right to the time when we usually wrap up a Freaky Friday anyway. So quite unbelievable. It's weird, Scott, right? Because, here we are. We didn't plan it or anything. We never do. But, all right, we're just over the 3 hours. But quite weird, right? I don't know. Just strange, dude. I thought we'd have been wrapped up after about 90 minutes when we didn't get connected to the network. And then something freaky happened. You see?
Hey, we just fell into a pocket and...
The tramp's pocket? Yeah. No, not that one. Yeah.
Hey, I felt like an elf falling into the wizard's sleeve.
As you do. So then it says, essentially, the modern world has pushed these creatures into hiding. According to Scarface, who I really regret calling that now because he's a really, really nice guy, but it's because I can't pronounce anything.
Starkey Odinson.
Starkey Odinson. Look at him. Look at this one. Is that what is going on here? And are these real supernatural beings that are being pushed out into the fringe by an encroaching modern world? Or is it pure legend after all? Well, whatever one may think, Iceland still manages to pull in plenty of accounts of elves, gnomes, and other hidden folk, and the traditions and at least passing belief in them remain strong here in this far-flung northern land. It's there. Is there anything to it? Or is there anything to it all? Or is this all pure myth and folklore? Well, me and Scott don't do pure myth and folklore. It would just be made up. It wouldn't be called myth or folklore if that was the case. It seems like the best way to learn about it all is for sure, or learn about it all for sure, is to give Scarface a visit at his school. Perhaps make your own mind up when you are done with your diploma in elfology in your back pocket. Yeah, there you go.
Hey.
Why not?
Why not?
Why not?
Hey, I mean, what else is there to do in Iceland besides, get your PhD in elfology and mine a bunch of crypto coin?
Yes, get the crypto coins going. That's the way forward. I'm going to get myself a wallet. I need to get myself a wallet. I really do.
I'll talk to you after the show.
Yes,
I'll tell you.
Indeed. Yes, exactly, Marty. It's Freaky Friday. Everybody has their certain topics they would love us to talk about. And in the chat room, it's never any different. Talk about this, talk about that. And the one topic in particular that somebody's very keen for me to talk about, because all of my listeners want me to talk about it. Funnily enough, none of my listeners asked me to talk about that. None of them are here on a Freaky Friday to hear any flavour of any of that stuff. And I'm sure there's other shows out there that's covering it all in depth. And nobody's making you watch this one. And I can promise you, I won't be talking about it here. So you have to go somewhere else to hear that stuff. The onus is on you to find somewhere talking about that stuff, not on us on Freaky Friday to talk about other stuff. I don't get it, Scott. It's pretty obvious what happens here on a Freaky Friday. It's weird, it's woo. Well, it very rarely dips its toe into the very divisive kind of stuff that the real world out there is full of, right?
Where's that white hat music?
Ah, well, you can't hear it if I put it on.
No.
So it doesn't feel the same when you can't hear it, dude. I don't feel right. I feel bad. I feel like not only do I censor you, but I like plug your ears as well. You can't even hear what's going on. It's like I cut you out of conversations and everything.
It's very strange because I can hear some things that you play and some things I can't. So I don't. There's something weird going on with the channels. We'll have to figure out. But
try it one last time, right? Just to see if it works this time, because it is weird. It's very weird. Let's try it. You hear that?
yeah, see, okay, so I can hear the media player, but I can't hear the YouTube videos, and I couldn't hear Brian.
Okay, I know how. Right, so
We'll figure
that's
that
all right.
out.
I figured it out myself now, because whatever the VLC player's output is on, I need to set all my other things that I want people to hear on the stream and you to hear on the stream to that output.
Set it to that output
Because there's
okay.
multiple channels and got you.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mhm.
So folks, I've had a blast. I really have. Scotty here, we'll be back hopefully tomorrow, but maybe not, Scott, because you've got you've got a bit of maybe toying about you could be doing, man. I don't know what's happening here.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna have to make a snap decision tonight on what I want to do. But if you don't see me this weekend, people, it's because I'm doing the big technology upgrade. I've got to pull the beast, the rig out and open her up, and we're gonna do some PC upgrades. So, if I'm not on the stream this weekend, that's what I'm going to be doing. I got 16 gigs of RAM and a new video card, so it's going to be a night and day difference.
So the next time we see you, it's going to be purring like a little pussycat.
I hope so. We can hope. I've been running this machine for, let's just say I've been pushing some old technology to its limits. So it's definitely time for the upgrade.
Think so?
Yeah.
Try to see.
Do we have effects on again? Is it working now?
Do I have my strange voice? Yes.
There you go.
Am I back in the bunker now? No? No, the bunker one isn't working anymore, dude.
Yeah. Where's your comms?
Yeah, the comms has gone away.
Oh, hang on. There it is. There it is.
Okay.
There it is. Yes. Scott, run the deeps there coming.
Oh my god, it sounds like one of those sounds like a supermarket phone when they're like calling somebody.
Aisle number 5.
Yes.
Yep,
yes,
it does.
yes.
But folks, we're out of here. It's got to that time of night. We're getting silly now. Scott's got lots to tell me in the background when we get off of here. I've had fun. I hope you've had fun. It's light. It's harmless. It's Friday the 13th. Some parts of the US, you've got a couple hours left of Friday the 13th, If you're over on the West Coast, you're at what? 7 p.m. right now, 5 hours to go. Maybe you want to crawl under the bed. I don't know. But I advise you, or I recommend to you, when we wrap up here, head on over to the paranormal portal, because that is going to leave you looking through the cracks in your fingers, because Brent Thomas, he turns up the woo factor every night over there on Paranormal Portal. He's on the same network as us. He's a great guy. Scott was on there last week. He was on for my Halloween special on the Kev Baker show. I can't support him enough. What he does, he's really good at it, Scott. And it's a
Definitely.
perfect show to go to after this.
Yeah, I mean, all of you out there who haven't seen the Paranormal Portal, you got to go subscribe to his channel. Brent really deserves a lot more subscribers than what he's got right now. I mean, he is putting in some hard work. He's got some of the craziest production value as far as like his OBS cuts and all of that stuff. I mean, he put a lot of work into his stuff, and he gets into such good topic and conversation that, yeah, I mean, go subscribe. Tell your friends to subscribe. I really want to get the Paranormal Portal's name out there. You know what I mean? I think we kind of we gotta step up and get Brent on the map. I think
that would be a good spin-off from us doing a woo-a-thon, for lack of a better term. If we joined forces for the 5 hours one night, all of us get our, big bad boy awake heads on.
We're just gonna call it the Freaky Portal.
But the thing is, Brent's got callers, we've got callers. We fire up a phone line, dude. The time's gonna fly. You know it flies when we've got callers, and when you're streaming.
We can tear through a 5-hour marathon. I think
easy,
really easy.
We're almost at 3.5 hours now, you maniac. Do you know what I mean?
Let's see.
And that's with barely nothing to talk about. So, folks, again, we will let you head on over to Brent's channel or wherever you're going to go. We'll be back tomorrow. I should be back with an impromptu stream at some point tomorrow. There'll also be the VIP lounge on Sunday for our members. A big shout out to all of our new members, and a big shout out to everybody who super chatted and membered today. We've got DJ Bison, Lance Muir, Spooky Andy, one Polly as well. We had La Curiosa, a new follower. We had Star Dreamer with a super chat as well. And this is what I'm going to start doing at the end of every stream. Anyone who's contributed, I'll give you a quick shout out. And because different class. So
gotta give those super chatters, and gotta give those fans a shout out, man.
Big time, dude. So this is gonna be cool because I always get this ending. I always do it differently, but now with the sampler, I'll be able to do it awesome, dude. Right? So what I always say on the way out is, right, always keep your mind open, keep looking for the woo, but not to the point where your brain turns to black goo. We are out of here. I should have recorded at that time. I got it bang on, dude. Bang on. So until tomorrow, folks. Adios, amigos. I need to play the music now, right? Come on, Scott. Are you liking what I've done there with the graphic? Come on. You know, that's pretty sinister looking.
How long did that take, Kev?
2 seconds.
Yeah, looks like 2 seconds.
Yeah, I just cut a bit out of the helmet and away I went.